It's the primal light. Let the clouds heal me of the stains. Gently wipe the sorrow off my life. I dream.
All right, good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get on started here before the top of the hour. This is going to be Tech Thursdays, episode 100. This is the 100th episode of Tech Thursdays. So I can't believe I've been doing it this long. And it just so happens that it is the launch day of the RX 9070 XT and the RX 9070. And these cards, unlike the card that launched yesterday, which we're also going to talk about, this one was actually very easy to get. It was very easy to get. Probably the easiest graphics card of recent history, at least. So very, very easy. So if you live near a Micro Center, it was even easier to get one of these. So the stock was very, very good compared to what we have seen throughout since the start of this year with the 50 series, at least. So literally all I did was wake up, drive to Micro Center. I got there, I hit like bad traffic, which I completely forgot that there was going to be traffic early in the morning. So I got there, 5 minutes before the store opened, and there was like 350 people in front of me in line waiting to get a graphics card. There was a lot of people. In fact, here, let me show you guys something here. There was a lot. So the stock is real. The stock was real. They're all sold out now, but they had ample stock. So this is just, I want to zoom in here just to give people an idea of how many people were lined up. You can't really see because the line goes all the way down there and then it loops around and you can't see it. It's like on the other side of the store. Then it loops back around and then it comes back over to the front door and then it snakes in about 3 or 4 times. It loops, and then finally people can enter the store. So it was like this basically since before the store opened. Very, very crowded. There was a whole lot of inventory though. So most micro centers had about close to 1,000 graphics cards, 1,000 9070 XT, and they had a lot of 9070s. But what was surprising, and this is a good surprise, they actually had more 9070 XTs than they had 9070s. So if you're somebody who wanted the XT and you lived near a micro center, it was pretty easy to get. The only challenge was if you wanted a particular card. Like, for example, if you wanted the Sapphire Nitro, for example. Or if you wanted one of the particular XFX cards, like the one that I was trying to get. So, the XFX Mercury with the LED light bar that has the Radeon logo, and the removable fans. So depending on if you wanted like a super enthusiast one, like one that has triple 8 pins, or the 12-volt high power cable like the Nitro or the Tai Chi, we're going to go over every single one of these, kind of like the motherboard videos that we did like last year. So we're going to do that for these graphics cards on this live stream. We don't need to go that in-depth on them because there's not that much there compared to motherboards that's worth talking about. But it was relatively easy to get one. I talked with some of the other members of the channel who were in the Discord earlier, and they were able to order one off of Newegg when the stock of the cards went online for sale. So that's really good to hear, which means that inventory lived up to the hype. Sir Darkness just subscribed. So yeah, the Micro Center buying experience is pretty straightforward. You literally showed up, you got in line, you waited till the store opened, then you had to wait through the line, and then you got in. So the total turnaround time for me, personally, I was there for 2 hours, just a little over 2 hours. It was like 2 hours and 10 minutes total time. But yeah, so if you live near a Micro Center, it was pretty easy to get one. It was relatively easy if you wanted to get one that was MSRP. So like if we're talking the Reaper from PowerColor. The Reaper was an MSRP, so this one sold for, what was it, $599, I believe, is MSRP. So $599, so about $600. So you could get a Reaper or an ASUS Prime. Both of these were, well, not the OC editions. This is different. Actually, no, the Tough, right? Oh, these are all the OC editions. But there were ASUS Primes that were $599, and there were also Reapers from PowerColor that were $599. And then I think there was also the ASRock Steel Legend was also available at MSRP. So there were a lot that were available for MSRP. They also had a large inventory of white cards. So like if you're going for a particular build, like if you wanted a white card, the ASRock Steel Legend was a very good white card that had RGB fans. The Sapphire Pure was also a really good choice if you were going for a white build. Sapphire Pure, these sold out really, really fast though, because I guess they're not, you know how they never make enough white colored graphics cards. So those sold out within the first 40 minutes of the store opening. I would imagine they sold out online pretty quickly as well. But yeah, the buying experience was very smooth. It was very straightforward. There were no hiccups. I think there were a couple of hiccups for some people. Like, I kind of think that some of the store salespeople mixed up some of the vouchers, because there were a couple of people who, they wanted a particular card, they were given a voucher, and then when they finally got to the checkout, their card wasn't available for some reason, so they weren't able to get the one they wanted. They had to, like, choose a different one, or they just didn't get one at all. So that was kind of a bummer for the few people that happened to. I witnessed somebody in front of me that happened to them. I'll tell you guys my story, my buying experience. So, like I said earlier, the original choice that I wanted, my top choice was the Mercury Magnetic Air. If you guys watch the unboxing video, you know that I don't have the Magnetic Air or the Mercury Magnetic Air. So this is my top choice. I went to Micro Center wanting to get this one. Then, when it was my turn to tell them like which one I wanted, they were going to hand me the voucher. You know, I said, okay, can I get the Mercury Magnetic Air in black? And they're like, we're sold out of it. Then I was like, okay, what about the Magnetic Air in white? And they're all sold out of it. Okay, how about the Sapphire Nitro? Even though it has the 12-volt cable, and I would prefer not to deal with that. And then the guy told me, we're all sold out of Sapphire. We don't have any Sapphire. No Pure, no Pulse, no Nitro. And I was like, what? Okay. Oh, speaking of the Pulse was another one that was MSRP. So this was another one that was $599. This one was actual MSRP, just like the Reaper and the ASUS Prime. And then the ASRock Steel Legend. So they had a lot of choices. There was also an XFX card. I think the Swift. The Swift was also MSRP. So if you wanted to literally just buy an MSRP card, no factory overclock, no fancy RGB, no triple 8-pin, no dual BIOS, you could get one. They were readily available. In fact, I think the bulk of the cards at Micro Center were MSRP cards. So they were literally just $599. So pretty easy to get a very high-performing card, because this graphics card, you know, for $600, I think the reason why there were so many people there, you think about it, $600 gets you a perfect graphics card for 1440p high refresh gaming. This card does not use copious amounts of electricity. This card has 16 gigabytes of VRAM. You know, it's quiet. It performs well. It has much better ray tracing performance than the older AMD cards. It's still not as good as NVIDIA in RT, but it's good enough for the average games that actually use some degree of ray tracing. So, you know, games like Monster Hunter, for example, which we will be live streaming Monster Hunter this weekend with the 9070 XT. So stay tuned for that. So, I think this card is an excellent value. And at first, when I showed up to the store, I was like, man, why are there like 300 plus people here this early in the morning? It's a Radeon card. This isn't an NVIDIA launch. Why are there was like a crowd of people that were equivalent to like the typical NVIDIA launch that were at this launch. And then I started thinking, okay, well, maybe they realize that it's a really good value. you know, because $600 gets you perfect 1440p. So yeah, it's really good. The value proposition is definitely there. This card is almost as fast as an RTX 4080 Super and a 7900 XTX. But those cards were significantly more money when they were new. In particular, 4080 Super launched a year ago for $1,000 MSRP, and those cards, the AIBs, typically sold for over $1,200. Those 4080 Supers, and this is in striking distance of a 4080 Super, so very, very good value for most people. Same amount of VRAM as a 4080 Super, so it's quite good. So it's no surprise why there were that many people that got up super early to wait outside in the cold, and they got their card. Their micro centers are completely sold out. They had about 1,000 cards on average per store nationwide, and they literally all sold out. As far as I know, all of them are sold out. Now, they still have some RX 9070s, so the cut down variant, that one is still available for sale at the MSRP. So if you're someone who wants, you know, you don't care about like that flagship level tier, I guess, the fastest one that AMD offers, you can get the 9070. You can save some money. You can also probably overclock it to get very close to a 9070 XT, which that is something that I am curious to look at, the overclocking headroom on these cards, because these cards are monolithic dies. They are single monolithic die, and they don't use, in particular, the 9070 does not pull that much electricity, which means that it has good overclocking headroom. So that'll be very interesting to see if somebody gets one of those and they start overclocking it to see how much more performance they can get. 9070 can apparently be overclocked to nearly... Yeah, that's exactly. So, I mean, it makes sense because it's kind of like... See, some people might not remember the RX Vega cards, but if you remember the Vega cards from AMD, Vega 56 and Vega 64... This is eerily similar to those two graphics cards, because one of them, so the 9070 has 56 compute units, the 9070 XT has 64 compute units, hence the old names Vega 56 and Vega 64. So you can almost call this Navi 56 and Navi 64. So it's kind of weird how it works out that way. And I remember the Vega 56 had a lot of overclocking headroom compared to the 64, so you could overclock a Vega 56 and get within striking distance of the Vega 64. So if somebody is pretty savvy at overclocking, they can save some money by a 9070 and then just overclock it to get, you know, within 2% or whatever of a 9070 XT. So pretty good value, very, very good value. It has been a long time since we have seen this type of value, because it made me realize, you know, back in the day, you could buy a GTX 970 from any of the AIBs for like $350, and you could overclock it to get within striking distance of the much more expensive $550 GTX 980. So these cards have that old school vibe in terms of overclock headroom, in terms of that value per dollar, you know, frames per dollar, like the whole package is there. And that is the reason why the reviews for these cards are so positive, even though these cards aren't like the fastest cards on the planet. You know, this proves that you don't have to be the absolute fastest card to win the value proposition and to win like favor in the eyes of tech reviewers. You know, so AMD has hit it out of the park with this one. This is definitely a really good card. I personally did not need to get the 9070 XT, but I am intrigued to test AMD's RDNA 4 architecture alongside the new FSR 4, so the new machine learning based upscaler. I want to see how that compares to my 4080 Super that I have, as well as my 7900 XT and my 7900 XTX. So we will be doing some side-by-side comparisons. I'll be looking at that thoroughly. And then as time goes by, FSR 4 will get rolled out to more games. So I think at this point, AMD has closed the gap on the feature parity with NVIDIA. The only thing that NVIDIA holds on to now is the transformer model. So they're like one half step ahead of AMD in the upscaling department, but AMD has overtaken NVIDIA in terms of, like, if you look at NVIDIA's DLSS CNN model, basically the DLSS that runs on like all of the NVIDIA cards, that one is worse than RDNA or FSR 4's model on the 9070 XT. So I encourage you guys to check out the Digital Foundry video. There's a couple of other videos. I will be doing my own testing on the image clarity for the upscaler, comparing this with the 4080 Super, in particular, DLSS 3. We may also look at DLSS 4. I don't think DLSS 4's transformer is, it's not limited to 50 series, so I will be able to test that as well. But yeah, so FSR 4 is basically the second best now. So it's better than all of the DLSS models except the latest one that came out that debuted with the 50 series. So that's really good. And that's really what counts. The multi-frame gen thing is kind of a meme at this point. You know, that's akin to Goku saying Kaioken attack times 3 times 4. Like, no one really cares, right? It doesn't really make much of a difference. It's better if you go Super Saiyan rather than just multiply the Kaioken attack. If you know what I'm saying. If you caught the Dragon Ball Z reference, I had to throw one out there. It was way too easy with the MFG. So, yeah. So, multi-frame gen is kind of like pointless. It doesn't really help. Really, all you need is just frame gen. And both of them have that. So, as far as I'm concerned, AMD has basically bridged the gap in terms of feature parity with NVIDIA. The only thing that NVIDIA holds on to at this point is they have better ray tracing performance. They still have better ray tracing performance. AMD was 1.5 to 2 generations, depending on the game. They were about 1.5 to 2 generations behind NVIDIA. Now they're really only like half a generation to 1 generation. So it's almost like they jumped 2 generations ahead of themselves. AMD, that is, in terms of their RT performance. So we will be looking at RT performance with this card. You guys know me. I don't really play a whole lot of games that are super hardcore on ray tracing. I guess the only game that I'm going to be playing in recent history that will use RT is Monster Hunter Wilds. I will be testing ray tracing in that game with the 9070 XT. And then we will also look at the upcoming Rise of the Ronin on PC. That game will also feature ray tracing because it had ray tracing for the PS5 Pro. So we will be looking at that once it comes out to PC. But yeah, this channel looks at games that you probably don't really hear of when it comes to ray tracing. We're not going to look at mainstream games. There's going to be no Cyberpunk on this channel. We're not going to look at any of that stuff that you can go see people test a billion times on other channels. No, we're going to look at stuff that no one looks at. Monster Hunter Wilds ray tracing, Rise of the Ronin ray tracing, and some other games that you don't really hear about with ray tracing. So that's what we cover on this channel. So stay tuned for that. And then we're also going to probably I will be doing a formal review, my own review. It's going to be more of like a long-term review because I don't get free samples. I have to spend my own money to buy this graphics card like I did this morning. So I will have, I'll have like the full picture in terms of my opinion of the graphics card after using it for like a week or two and running it through its paces of using it as a daily driver. I think that's more than the average reviewer does. So I'll be using it for video editing. I'll be with DaVinci Resolve for editing 4K video. We will be looking at AMD's AV1 encoder. Archangel, thanks for the sub. We will be looking at everything. Not only am I going to look at the gaming, the RT, all that stuff, FSR 4, frame gen, we're going to look at the productivity. We're going to look at DaVinci Resolve in particular because that's what I use to edit the videos for this channel. So I will be using this card for productivity. We may also look at AI stuff. I've been meaning to do a few more videos with AI, but the bulk of my audience isn't really that interested in AI. So we will do some AI. We'll get around to it at some point. But yeah, we're going to do the whole thing, the whole picture. Just test everything on the card. But yeah, the card that I ended up getting, because they didn't have, like, they were all out of the Mercury, they were all out of the Nitro. What was the other one that I wanted to get? I think it was just those. Those were my top two. So then I was like, okay. Then the sales guy was like, well, out of the high-end ones, we still have the ASRock Tai Chi. That's a pretty good one. And then I was like, man, do I really want to get an ASRock? The thing about the Tai Chi also, just like the Nitro, the Tai Chi uses the 12-volt 2x6 power cable, just like on the NVIDIA cards. I was like, I really don't want to deal with that connector. I just don't want that connector. So I told the sales guy, you know what? I'll just get the Red Devil. Just give me the Red Devil. So he gave me the voucher for the Red Devil. So then I went on my way through the checkout line. So I was in the line to snake through the back of the store and go all the way around to the checkout. But then it curved around back to where the sales guys were. And the whole time I was like looking at the thing for the Red Devil, and I was like, I don't really want to know. I don't want the Red Devil. I was thinking to myself, I'm going to regret buying this. I really just don't feel like I want the Red Devil. You know, like, nothing against PowerColor. PowerColor's cards are good quality. But I was thinking, I just don't want the Red Devil, man. I didn't come here to buy a Red Devil. So, and I don't really need the graphics card. I'm buying the graphics card to make YouTube videos about it and to test AMD's machine learning upscaler. That's the main reason why I'm buying it. So I was like, if I'm getting this, I want to get one that I actually want. So, and I didn't feel like buying the Red Devil. The Red Devil, I would have gotten it if they didn't have the other card that I wanted. So I was like, okay, my contingency plan is going to be the Quicksilver from XFX. If I can't get the Mercury, if I can't get the fancy RGB light bar and the triple 8-pin, then my backup is going to be the standard non-RGB with the dual 8-pin, with the standard power limit. You know, it's not going to have as much overclock headroom as this one, because this one has a triple 8-pin. So I realized, I was like, well, this might hinder a little bit of overclocking, but I think it'll still be fine. So this is the one that I end up getting, hence the reason why the unboxing video features the Quicksilver. This is the box for the Quicksilver. So the unboxing is on the channel. If you guys want to know what is in the box, go watch the video, because it's pretty fancy. You have to actually assemble the graphics card yourself. It requires user assembly. Now it's very minor. The card has the 3 fans that are removable. They are attached via magnets. So that is very, very convenient if you want to, for example, clean all the dust out of the graphics card. Very easy. It also has removable side panel things. So this stuff that goes on the side, you can remove them. You can paint them if you want, or you can like customize them. They're fully removable. So you can see in the picture here, customizable shroud. So this red section, the red sections are removable on this graphics card. Now, the Mercury version does not have that ability. Only the Quicksilver has that. I don't think the Swift has that either. So for those that don't know about XFX branding, typically they have the white and the black edition for most of their cards. And then there's 3 tiers. There's Mercury, which is like, think of this like Sapphire Nitro. This is the highest tier. This is like Red Devil and Nitro. That's Mercury from XFX. Then there is kind of the middle one, which is Quicksilver. Quicksilver is the equivalent to Sapphire Pure, or the ASUS Tough, or the Hellhound from PowerColor falls into this second tier category. So this is kind of like the silver metal. So it's like Mercury's like gold, then you got silver, and then you got bronze, which is Swift. So Swift is going to be your more budget-friendly one. This is the one that's going to be at MSRP. This one doesn't have the fancy RGB. This one doesn't have removable fans. If we're talking XFX, you can still get one in white. It still has lighting, though, which is surprising, because some of the more entry-level ones don't have lighting at all. This one actually has the XFX logo that lights up, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, so these are the three. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna get the Quicksilver and be done with this because, you know, whatever. I don't feel like buying the Red Devil. So this is the one that I have. This is the one that we're gonna be doing the review on, and this is the one that we will be using as the main GPU for the next several weeks. So yeah, we're gonna see what FSR4 does and how the new media engine works, because this thing lets you do unlimited renders. Like there's no limit. It's dual encode, but it's like unlimited renders. So now you're gonna be limited to the VRAM, and you're gonna be limited to like GPU utilization, obviously. But you know, it doesn't lock you down at a software level like the competitor does. So that's pretty cool. So this is it. That was kind of the buying experience. You know, all the cards sold out. I heard people could get one on Newegg relatively easily, and then they were all sold out. I think they lasted the first hour or so, and then they were all sold out. But I don't know. You guys tell me if you managed to buy one this morning, or if you were attempting to buy one this morning online. What was your buying experience like? Because for me, going into Micro Center, it was super easy. It was like the easiest graphics card I've ever purchased at a launch day thing. Like, this is way easier than trying to buy like any of the Nvidia cards, like ever, in recent history. You got the Mercury magnetic error? Yeah, the white one. Yeah, I asked them if they had the white one, because like I would settle for the white one if the black one was sold out, but they didn't have that one. They were all sold out. They had both. It's just, I was too far back, man. There was like 300 to 400 people in front of me. So I was like, the chances of me getting the particular one that I want, which is a flagship one, is probably very slim. You saw Pure overclocked? Yeah, this one is kind of like the Pure, guys. If you don't know XFX, just know that, okay, Sapphire, speaking of Sapphire has Nitro, which is the highest tier. Then they have Pure, which is the middle. Then they have Pulse, which is the entry level. So if we're talking XFX, Nitro equals Mercury. Pure equals Quicksilver. Pulse equals Swift. And if we're talking PowerColor Red Devil equals Nitro. Hellhound equals Pure or Quicksilver, and then Reaper equals Swift and Pulse. So all of them have like 3 different tiers within the brand. Like PowerColor has 3 tiers. They have a gold, silver, bronze. Sapphire has a gold, silver, bronze. XFX has a gold, silver, bronze. So if you understand that, the nomenclature, the brand names, then you kind of get an idea of why certain cards are more expensive than others. Because people are like, well, is it worth paying over MSRP? Well, if you're enthusiast, it kind of is, because you get things like dual BIOS. You get things like removable fans. You get things like RGB, if you actually care about RGB. You get a triple 8-pin, so you get more overclock power limits. So you get a higher power limit. So, you know, there are pros to having advantages to having a higher, more expensive tier of the same graphics card. Doesn't necessarily guarantee, but it sets you up with a better head start if you're someone who's looking to overclock the graphics card to get more performance versus stock. Newegg canceled your Nitro. Everyone in Miami got stock till 2 p.m. Wow, dude, that means they had a lot. That means Miami had probably like 2,000 cards, because most micro centers had about 1,000 cards. But if it lasted till 2 p.m., that means they had at least more than 1,500 cards if it lasted that long. Wow. That's good, though. That means that they had good stock. Compared to the 5070, some micro centers didn't even have any 5070s yesterday. So if you wanted a 5070, if you were one of the 2 people that actually cared to buy a 5070 after watching all the negative reviews, I'm sorry, but like a lot of those micro centers didn't even have a single card. Best Buy isn't even selling the Founders Edition 5070 until the end of this month. So, pretty terrible, man. Like, I don't know if I should feel bad for the people that want a 5070 or if I should just not care. Like, I don't know. That's weird. It's like 5070, man. 5070 just like rolled out the red carpet. 5070 was like, wave the red flag. Here you go. Here you go, 9070, my rival. Here you go, 9070 XT, my rival's big brother. I will roll out the red carpet for both of you now to have your wonderful launch day. Thank you very much. That's basically RTX 5070. So the Micro Center in Tustin had stock of the RX 9070 XT until 4 p. Oh yeah, well the Tustin one, man. The Tustin one was the only one that had passable inventory of the 5090 launch. No other Micro Center had decent stock for the 5090 except the Tustin Micro Center. So I'm not actually surprised that Tustin lasted all the way until 4 p.m. That's not that surprising, considering that store usually gets a huge inventory of anything on any launch for any PC DIY enthusiast hardware. If I could choose between the Mercury and the Quicksilver, like if both of them were available, and if the Mercury was $50 more, I would still buy the Mercury. I would still buy the Mercury. You were able to get a XFX Mercury magnetic, yeah. Well, I don't know how many people went to Micro Center to buy one today because they're afraid of the tariff thing. The tariffs will raise the prices, but I don't think it will raise them that much. I think that there's going to have to be an adjustment, though, because of supply. So I don't know. Newegg keeps restocking. Well, people were saying in the chat that their Newegg orders were getting canceled. Like I've seen 2 people say that their Nitro orders got canceled from Newegg. So I don't know what's going on there, but you know, like I don't have a problem with buying from Newegg. I got my so far this year I've purchased 2 graphics cards. You guys may have forgotten the graphics card that I bought back in January. I've purchased 2 graphics cards in 2025 so far. One back in January, and another one literally today. So what was the graphics card that I bought back in January? Who here remembers what graphics card I purchased in January? B580. B580. And I got that from Newegg. I bought mine off of Newegg. It was the standard Intel limited edition. I got it off of Newegg back in January. So I don't have any problem with buying from Newegg. I mean, most of my graphics cards throughout history, well, I don't know. I bought so many graphics cards from Micro Center in the last 5 years that I don't know. Before Micro Center though, like Newegg was my go-to. Like that was where I used to always get my GPUs. It was always Newegg. I got my GTX 970 from Newegg. I got my R9 Fury Sapphire Tri-X from Newegg. Vega 64 was from Newegg. I'm trying to think. Maybe I need to do a breakdown of like which GPUs I bought out of my entire collection. You know what? Now I kind of wonder like what. So yeah, I think most of them are. All the old ones are definitely from Newegg. All the recent ones are from Micro Center though. Not all of them though, because I did buy that Intel card from Newegg. I bought where did I get the Radeon 7? Radeon 7 was Micro Center. Most of my NVIDIA cards are from Best Buy. Literally every single one of my NVIDIA cards, except for one, is from Best Buy. So it's weird. Like all the AMD cards are either from Newegg or Micro Center. The NVIDIA cards are either from Best Buy or Newegg. Well, in the case of my NVIDIA cards, Only one NVIDIA card. My very first NVIDIA card is from Newegg. All the others are from Best Buy. Best Buy is an NVIDIA shill. No, Best Buy will have 9070s. They just never have them at launch in decent quantities. They do have them. If you look them up, they're on the Best Buy site. They had like a very, very low stock though. Someone told me that they dropped like 3 hours after everyone else listed their cards for sale. And then they only had like, I don't know, like the stock was so short-lived that they sold out almost instantly on Best Buy. But they have them. Best Buy did have them. I don't know, maybe I should list all the GPUs that I've bought over the years. We were going to talk about the reviews, but I think we'll talk about the reviews in a little bit. Let me see here. So I'm just trying to think, like, X850 XT, that was Newegg. HD 5770, that was Newegg. HD 7970 was Newegg. What'd I get after that? What did I get after that? R9 290X. That was Newegg. Then what did I get? My first NVIDIA card? Oh, my first NVIDIA card. GTX 970. Newegg. Then I got, there's some other ones in here too. There's like the HD 7870 Newegg. Okay, so GTX 970 Newegg. R9 Fury Newegg. Man, when did I start buying from my... Oh! Yeah, it was pretty soon, actually. It was RX 480. Micro Center. Yeah. And I went to the launch day of the RX 480. I'll never forget it. It was June 29th, 2016. June 29th, 2016. I was there in person. That's why I remember the day. And I will always remember this day too. March 6th, 2025. Because this is the one where you go in person and you wait in the line and all that stuff. I'll never forget. So yeah, that was Micro Center. Maybe that's what made me stop going to Newegg for cards. So it was that one. And then GTX 1080 Founders Edition, Best Buy. Best Buy. And then... what did I get after a 1080? Oh, RX Vega 64 Newegg. So that one was definitely Newegg. That one was very hard to buy at launch. And because this was the crypto wave. This was the crypto wave of 2017. Vega 64 and Vega 56 launched right into the crypto wave and were gobbled up instantly. So yeah, Micro Center wasn't an option because of, you know, like, I don't know, scalpers and low inventory. So Newegg it was. And then, what was my next card after Vega? This would have been like 2018. I don't even think I got any cards in 2018. 2018 was 20 series. That was a huge skip. 20 series was a complete skip. Not even worth it. Just like 50 series. 20 series was bad. 50 series is worse. So, yeah. 50 series is a skip. 20 series was a skip. So, I guess it was... I'm trying to remember. Was it the... Could it be? RX 5700 XT, which was actually purchased from AMD Direct. AMD.com. Yes, AMD.com. Reference blower style card from AMD.com. Yeah, okay. So I did actually buy from another thing besides Best Buy and Newegg and Micro Center. So, okay. Actually, hold on. That was not the next card. RX, no. Radeon 7. Radeon 7 was Micro Center. Oh yeah, Radeon 7. How can anyone forget about Radeon 7? So yeah, actually somewhere in here, second GTX 1080 from Best Buy. This was after the price drop. Actually, both were in price drop. So these were $549 because after the 1080 Ti came out, Nvidia dropped the price because remember the 1080 used to be $699 for the Founders Edition. Then when 1080 Ti came out, they dropped the price of 1080 down to $549. So the second card I purchased, that one was at $549 at Best Buy. Dual Founders Editions. This is the reason why I have SLI videos on my channel that feature 2 GTX 1080 Founders Editions in SLI. Because I do have dual 1080s. So yeah, and in fact I have dual Vega 64. I don't know what happened to the second card. I think I sold that one or something. But yeah, I did have 2 Vega 64s at once upon a time. And then Radeon 7, this one. Okay, so then what did I get after this? Oh yeah. RX 6900 XT from Micro Center. I'm probably one of the few people that bought so many AMD cards over the years. Well, you can tell these cards are more spaced out. Well, okay, these cards are like way, way spaced out in terms of how far apart they are in time. Okay, then I got 6900 XT from Micro Center. When did things get crazy though? Because I feel like this isn't that crazy. This just looks like enthusiast buying habits right here. Things got really crazy. I think it was the YouTube channel. It was what made things ridiculous because that would have been 2020 when I got the 6900 XT. That was at the very end of 2020. That was December 2020. December 8th or December 9th, 2020 was when I got the 6900 XT AMD reference card. So all of these cards, every single one of these cards except this one. This is XFX. This one is ASUS Matrix Platinum. This one is PowerColor. We'll just say this, well, yeah, PowerColor PCS Plus. That brand doesn't exist anymore. It's now called Red Devil. This one is MSI Gaming X. This one is Sapphire Tri-X, which is now, I guess, the Pure series. And then we'll say everything else. So I guess, so that it makes sense to people, if you see a name here, it means that this is an AIB custom cooled card. If there is nothing here, like if it's blank, that means that it is a reference card. So that means this is a blower style reference. This is a Founders Edition blower style. This is a blower style Vega 64. This is a blower style FE reference card. This is a reference AMD Radeon 7 because they were only reference AMD Radeon 7. This is a blower style 5700 XT reference card. And this is the very fancy looking AMD reference 6900 XT. So my only, at this point in time, my only AIB cards were these. All the others on this list are reference cards. I really wish there was a 9070 reference card. Yeah, I would have definitely chose that one. I like to buy reference cards, if you haven't noticed. So, what did I get after this? Because this would be... Was it Intel's card? Was it A770? I think it was A770. Was that it? I think so. Wait, no, that was... Yeah, well, no. Yeah, it was A770. Micro Center. So Intel's A770 was from Micro Center, and then Then it was this one. Yeah. It was this one. Then it was this one. Okay, I see what's happening now. This is when things start getting crazy. This is where things start getting crazy. Yeah, this is where Micro Center starts getting all the money. Okay, I can see where this is going to start happening. So, okay, it all started with Intel's GPU. Intel's A770 started, like, I don't know, squandering money on graphics cards. Because there's, like, this is where it gets really stupid. This one was, where did I get this? Oh, Newegg. Newegg, then RX 7900 XTX, Newegg. The difference is, the middle one is an AMD reference card. This one is a Nitro Plus. So yeah, triple 7900 XTXs. One from Micro Center and two from Newegg. Okay, so this does indicate to me that I still have bought the majority of the GPUs over the years from Newegg. So yeah, Newegg is legit. Newegg is definitely legit. So those were all like 2023. And then also we're missing a bunch of cards. We're missing a bunch of cards. These aren't supposed to be here yet. Yeah, none of those are supposed to be there. I completely forgot about everybody's favorite graphics card, the RTX 3080 Ti from Best Buy, and the RTX 3090 Ti from Best Buy. I was like, wait, there's this huge gap of like nothing. And I was like, when was the switch to NVIDIA? There was a switch to NVIDIA at some point. I don't even know what happened. Okay, that's what was going on. Okay, Best Buy and Best Buy, Founders Edition and Founders Edition. So yeah, those 30 series cards, I completely forgot about them. Then a 770 from Micro Center, and then it gets crazy. RX 700 XT, Micro Center. And then this is where, okay, now we're going to do the three in a row. So we got RX 7900 XTX. This one was Micro Center. This one was Red Devil, limited edition. This is, out of my XTX cards, this is my least favorite one. There's that one. Then there's the reference from Newegg. Then there's that one came in a Sapphire box, but it's a reference card. And then this one is the Nitro, also from Newegg. These were not purchased back to back. These were purchased like staggered throughout the course of 2023. Red Devil was December 2022. That was around launch of the cards, and then the other two came later. So these are all like staggered over several months, over the course of 2023. And then, was there an Intel? Oh, somewhere in there, the A750 from Micro Center. The RX 7600 was purchased from Micro Center. That was a waste of money. That was a waste of money because I barely ever used it. And then I gave it to a family member.
I am glad that AMD has made a successful launch. If it can't force NVIDIA to lower prices, at least I hope AMD will force them to keep up on stock, especially at the top end.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point that you bring up about keeping up on stock. Because right now, the reason why the NVIDIA graphics cards are so hard to get, there's two things. There's two reasons. There's two reasons why NVIDIA's inventory is so low. It's at an all-time low for consumer-grade hardware. It's because, well, as you know, NVIDIA has to purchase the wafers from TSMC for the node. And at the same time, NVIDIA has had a very, very large backlog of orders that have been on back order for their enterprise customers. So yeah, here we go. Someone beat me to it. AI. Yes, that's one of the reasons. That's not the only reason. That's one of the reasons. There are two reasons why the 50 series cards are the way they are. One is the backlog of orders for the AI customers. That is gobbling up a lot of the inventory as soon as it's coming out of the wafer fabs. They're immediately packaging those and putting those on PCBs for the enterprise market. Now, the other reason why it is very hard to buy an NVIDIA card. Now, this doesn't really affect the mid-range NVIDIA cards. This is mostly going to be for like 5090, 5080, but mostly 5090. The yields on the really big Blackwell dies are not good. They're not good. And that's the reason why, that's one of the reasons why I think that the missing ROPs on some of the cards happened, because the yields were not that good, and some of them somehow managed to... I don't know the reason why NVIDIA allowed the missing ROPs GPUs to actually get turned into production units that were shipped to retailers. I have no idea why that happened, because there are so many ways that they could have caught that ahead of time. So the missing ROPs is really, really bad. Like that right there proves that they're having yield issues with this new architecture, with the new die on the new TSM. Well, it's the same TSMC node, so it's really weird that they're having yield issues when it is still the same node that the 40 series was built on. So I don't really know why that's happening to them, but the 5090 is in very short supply because of poor yields, and as a result of that, there are some other symptoms of poor yields, and, missing ROPs is one of them. So they found that, okay, you can still power up the card, you can still make it function, just some of those parts have to be disabled for it to run with full stability. And that's the reason why you have missing ROPs on some of the cards. But that's a really great point of view on like the stock, because that's the main problem the 50 series has right now. At the end of the day, other than the 5070, the 50 series is not like absolutely terrible. Like 5070 Ti is an okay product. 5070 is a garbage product, but 5070 Ti is okay. 5080 is also like kind of underwhelming in a lot of ways, but it's kind of okay. I mean, it's nothing to get excited about. It's like 10% better than 4080. So it's really doesn't do anything. So that's why 5080 is a disappointment in a lot of ways. 5090 brings the performance, but there are so many caveats that we've talked about so many times. I don't feel like repeating all of them here. The high power consumption, the having to monitor the current draw and all this stuff, and it requires more extra care, more attention that the average consumer doesn't really want to have to deal with. So the 5090 is definitely not for anyone who's not an enthusiast. Let's put it that way. It's expensive. It's high maintenance. So you combine all these different things surrounding the 50 series in general, and that's the reason why it's not NVIDIA's best product launch in a long time. It's definitely an underwhelming generation overall. So you've got like terrible things like the 5070. You have the potential current draw issues over cables on 5090, coupled with the high price and the very, very low inventory because of the yield issues, and that can manifest as missing ROPs and other things. So it's, I don't know. Like, really, if I had to say which card out of the 50 series is the best one, like objectively, that doesn't have severe challenges or is just terrible value, 5070 Ti would have been better if it actually was at MSRP. So 5070 Ti is probably the best one out of the 50 series so far, objectively speaking, not counting like the reality of the MSRP being like all over the place because there's no reference card to ground it somewhere, So very, very lackluster generation from NVIDIA. So that one, I think for most people, unless they're on a really, really old graphics card, like if they're on like a 20 series or maybe even most 30 series cards, upgrading to a 50 series is going to be a good upgrade for them. But for most people, people on 40 series are probably going to feel kind of, you know, was it really worth spending all that money for a 50 series if you were already on 40 series, knowing all the things that surround this generation, you know, all the negative stigma around it. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. I think for most people on 40 series, it's a complete skip for the average person who's on a 40 series card. Been using 5090 for over a month, enjoying it. Yeah, I mean, yeah. If you, well, you have the Astral, so you have the one card out of the entire bunch that actually has the ability to report if it's overdrawing on current. So that's the only one that gives you peace of mind. Like, imagine someone on the FE card with no way to monitor the current draw, and it's also the loudest one. It has the worst cooling. The reason why NVIDIA hid the hotspot temperature is because the Founders Edition memory temperature and the hotspot, in particular the hotspot on Founders Edition, runs over 100 degrees Celsius. And NVIDIA doesn't want consumers or reviewers knowing that. So they're not going to publish that. They're not going to show that in like GPU-Z or any of the monitoring tools like Hardware Info, because they don't want people freaking out that their 5090 Founders Edition is like 102 degrees on the hotspot. You know, it's not really a problem for cards like the Astral because they throw big amounts of metal at the problem to soak all the heat. But the Founders Edition doesn't have enough metal. It does not have enough thermal mass to absorb 575 watts. So what did NVIDIA do in all their infinite wisdom? Remove the hotspot. You don't need to know. It's like the Jedi mind trick. It's like, well, what about the hotspot temperature? You don't need to know the hotspot temperature. Oh, I don't need to know the hotspot temperature. You don't need to put that in monitoring tools. I don't need to update the monitoring tools. You know, like, it's the Jedi mind trick. NVIDIA just literally is like, you don't need the hotspot temperature, and you don't need to monitor that in the monitoring tools. So, and then everyone's like, okay, everyone's on board with that. Everyone's on board with that. Okay, who cares about hotspot? It's irrelevant. The hotspot is not necessary. It's irrelevant. The hotspot's not necessary. It's irrelevant. Yeah, that's basically what it is. So, you know, like, I don't know, man. It's a weird... 50 series is weird. It's definitely not the best NVIDIA launch in a long time. Um... 9070 standard 200 watt TDP. Yeah. So, I mean, just looking at this, I can tell, like, I still bought a bunch of cards from Newegg over the years. Even like 2XTX, I completely forgot that two of them are from Newegg. So, I don't know. Let me finish this list real quick. So, RX 7600 was Micro Center. What was after that? This would have been like 2023. Okay, the Intel card. I think this is supposed to be the other way around, but I can't. It doesn't really matter. They were both from 2023. I forgot what I got after this card. So I already have the Intel, all that stuff. Oh, yeah. This one. How could I forget? RTX 4090. RTX 4090. Best Buy. Founders Edition. 4090. So I went from buying a RX 7600 for like $270 or whatever to paying like $15.99 for a RTX 4090 at Best Buy. And then that was interesting, getting those two cards. They're very, very different. Then what was after that? That would have been, okay, so then that brings us to last year now. Was there, okay, I guess that was it. That was it, yeah. RTX 4080 Super Founders Edition Best Buy. And then that brings us to this year, right? There was no... Oh, yes. That brings us to this year. Intel ARC B580 from Newegg. Then the card from today. Micro Center. I think that's it. I think that's the whole collection. I think that's all of them. This one is XFX Quicksilver. This is an AIB. So I only have like 1, 2, 3 out of my modern graphics cards. I only have like 3 AIB cards. Oh, you're right. The 380. You're right. When did I get that card? That card was probably, that was last year. Yeah, okay, so that was between the B580 and the 4080, I think. Yeah, you're right. ARC A380. Yeah, this one was like somewhere, you know, like it was between these two cards. It was sometime like last spring, I think, was when I got it. It was really, I completely forget about the cards that are like super cheap. This one was like $100 something from Micro Center. And this is the ASRock. We'll just put it here, I guess. This is the ASRock Challenger. Custom AIB. Okay, so I do have an AIB Intel card. The A380, yeah. Okay, yeah, because these two are in the same computer right now. The computer went to sleep. It was on the camera on the left side of the screen. I have to go turn it on. It's off. That's the stream. That's the gaming. That's the computer that has all the overclocking content on it. So yeah, these two are in the exact same computer right now. Let me see. Let me turn it on real quick. Let me wake it up. Wake it up. Where is that computer? Let's see. Yeah. There we go. Okay, so you can see the dual graphics cards. We have the XFX. You can see, like, right above me, the XFX logo with the Radeon logo. That is the 9070 XT. And then right underneath it is the ASRock Intel Arc A380. Dual graphics cards. It's like half the length of the 9070 XT. Who can tell what motherboard that is? You can't see the sag bracket because of the camera angle. It's there. It's all the way at the back near the motherboard. Who knows what motherboard that is? Only a true enthusiast that has studied all the motherboards will know how to tell what motherboard that is. Who knows what motherboard? Okay, now people are probably going to get it by looking at that. By seeing the shroud. I should not have given that away. It's the Hero, guys. It's the Crosshair Hero. The X870E Crosshair Hero, the ROG. That is the computer with the 9800 X3D. Yeah, so we are not streaming on that computer right now. That computer we will be using that computer to live stream, test games with the 9070 XT tomorrow evening. So it's going to be tomorrow's stream. Yeah, but so far I've done a couple of preliminary tests with the card. I installed the driver for the card, launch day driver. I ran Monster Hunter. I played like some Monster Hunter Wilds with it earlier. I ran the Monster Hunter Wilds benchmark. The 9070 XT beat my PowerColor Red Devil 7900 XTX by like 4 frames per second at 1440p in Monster Hunter Wilds benchmark. So, relatively impressed considering the Red Devil was $1,000 and this one was like $700. And it has less shaders. It has less VRAM. So, quite impressive. And it uses less power. The Red Devil's a factory overclocked card. I will be testing FSR4. I was trying to test FSR4 with Monster Hunter Wilds. I was trying to force it on in the driver, but I guess the game has to have some, like the devs have to turn on something to implement it in their game. You can't just like turn it on in Radeon settings and then like open your game and turn on FSR and then it automatically works. It's not like that. Apparently it has to, you're supposed to turn it on in the driver, which I did. You're supposed to load up the game, turn on FSR, but then like if the driver specifies to the game that FSR4 is available, the game is supposed to then tell you that there's an FSR4 mode available, and I wasn't getting that option in Monster Hunter. So there's something that Capcom hasn't done. So I guess, I don't know, I guess it requires the developers to do something to implement it. It's not as easy as just, oh, just force it on in the thing and it'll work. That's not that simple. I thought it was that simple, but apparently that's not how it works. So yeah. We will be looking at that tomorrow. But now I can do, so now I can test the media encoding and the stream quality of AMD's new encoder for RDNA 4, and I can see how that compares to Intel's on the A380. That's the reason why the A380 is in that computer. Something Capcom hasn't done. Well, you know, I mean, it's Capcom. A tale as old as time. Okay, so let's go. Let's look at the. Let's go over some of these AIB cards. So let's look at Acer real quick. Now, Acer was not at Micro Center, as far as I know. I did not see any of the Acer cards for sale at Micro Center. You guys tell me, for those of you that were shopping on Newegg today, or if you guys in the UK or other parts of the world, did you guys see Acer Nitro or Acer Predator available today? Anywhere? Anyone? Because I didn't see any Acer cards. The Acer Predator is the closest looking card to the AMD reference card in terms of the color scheme. So I was kind of like, I was hoping to see the Acer in stock because I was like, man, if there's no AMD reference card, the Acer Predator actually looks kind of like the AMD reference card, so I might just get that one. But it was never available, so it's like, okay, well, whatever. Yeah, I didn't see it at Micro Center at all. So neither one. The Acer Nitro also, it's funny because it's like they probably need to come up with another brand for their graphics card other than Nitro. Now, I know that Acer has like a Nitro gaming laptop brand, and the Nitro monitors, I think those are also like a monitor brand, but they also have the Acer Predator brand. So I don't know, like this to me is a problem because this overlaps with Sapphire, and Sapphire has been doing AMD cards longer than Acer has, so I don't think Acer should be using the Nitro name. It's going to confuse people. They're going to, if they're not paying attention, they tell sales guy, oh, I want the Nitro. And if the sales guy has the Acer, they won't know, like, unless they ask them. So they just sell them a Nitro Acer instead of a Nitro Sapphire, and the customer actually wanted a Sapphire Nitro. So, you know, like, I can see weird one-off scenarios happening like that. So these guys definitely need to change the name on that. But I don't know. These guys, I didn't see them in stock anywhere, so maybe it's not a big deal. So, but these cards are not available in North America, to my knowledge. So we'll kind of skip over them. So let's look at Gigabyte. So Gigabyte had 2 cards at launch. They had, and both of them were at Micro Center this morning. And from what I heard, they were also on Newegg. So there's the gaming OC, and then there's the more premium Aorus. Because Aorus is Gigabyte's premium brand. Think of it like the equivalent to the Republic of Gamers, or ROG from ASUS. So on the left here, we have the Aorus Elite, which is, this would be kind of like the Nitro or the Red Devil. Now, Gigabyte does have the Master, but the problem with Gigabyte is because of NVIDIA's GeForce Partner Program, Gigabyte has been basically, what is the word, barred from selling an Aorus Master with an AMD chip in it. They can only sell NVIDIA cards with Aorus Master branding tier because of the GeForce Partner Program. Like, this is something that no one really talks about anymore. So unfortunately, there will never be any Aorus Master for Radeon cards because of the NVIDIA GeForce Partner Program. So, like, if they wanted to offer the exact same cooler on an AMD card, they would have to call it something other than Aorus Master. So, I don't know, maybe what's stopping Gigabyte from doing, like, Aorus Extreme? I don't know, with an X. But anyway, so the Aorus Elite is the highest end Gigabyte card for the Radeon brand, which is unfortunate. You don't get an Aorus Master option. But basically, the main difference is going to be the Master has a slightly higher power limit, but you can't get an AMD Aorus Master, so whatever. And then the Elite is kind of like the second one from that. So this one is actually the highest end one from Gigabyte. And then the second one over here on the right is the Radeon Gaming OC. So this is just the regular gaming OC. So this one does not have the Aorus branding. This is more of like the well, it's OC, so it's still factory overclocked. So this one is kind of like the Sapphire Pure in terms of its position in the market. And then they'll have a regular gaming that does not have the overclock, which would be it, like the MSRP. So there's two of them. I guess if we go to the specifications here, the main difference is going to be the boost clocks are different. The power limits are different out of the factory. So the gaming OC has a boost clock of 3060 megahertz versus the reference. So if you're buying the non-OC, the clock on that, the boost clock will be 2970 megahertz. But if you're buying the OC variant, you're getting a slight factory overclock. That's a 90 megahertz overclock. So almost 100 megahertz. The game clock doesn't change too much. It's like reference is set to 2400 megahertz. But the thing is, the boost clock is the one that matters more on these, because your game clock is like an average over a long period of time. But that's also going to be very game dependent. If the game is pushing a lot of like heavy utilization of the shaders constantly, for example, and the GPU is pegged at 100% all the time, your base clock will be lower, or your game clock will be lower. Your average game clock will be lower, but your power limit and your cooling capability on the card will allow that to trend higher. And that is the reason why this overclocked variant is allowing it to run at an average of 2,520 megahertz, or 2.5 gigahertz. So about 120 megahertz over the reference spec. So that's the OC. And then the Aorus Elite goes even higher. So the Aorus Elite, the boost clock is the highest boost clock. It ties with the XFX Mercury Magnetic Air Edition, because both the Aorus Elite and the XFX Mercury have the highest boost clock. Both of them come out of the factory at 3.1 gigahertz. This is the reason why the XFX Mercury was my top choice, because I wanted to start with the highest boost clock right out the gate. That was the reason why I wanted to buy that one today. But instead I ended up getting the Quicksilver, which I think the Quicksilver just has reference spec, which at the end of the day is totally fine now that I think about it, because I tend to I benchmark for reviews at reference clock speeds, so I can give people the general performance, the expected general performance of how the card performs at factory stock settings. And then if we're looking at a specific card, like in this case, if we were looking at the Elite from Gigabyte, I would run that one at stock with its VBIOS, which would allow it to run at 3.1 gigahertz out of the box, just to show how much more performance you get from a custom AIB card like the Gigabyte Aorus Elite versus AMD reference specs like this. So it's not going to be like an insane amount of more performance because you're talking like 130 megahertz at most. So that'll probably turn into 0.5% more performance. Who knows? You start playing with the power sliders though, then you will see an actual improvement. But the thing is, you could take any reference card or any card that's not factory overclocked and do the exact same thing. Just raise the power limit and then just set the clock speeds to match these, and then you're good to go. So then the only thing holding you back at that point is the cooling of your particular card, as well as the silicon lottery of the chip that you actually have. So factory overclocks are not, they're not like absolutely necessary. Like if you get a reference card, if you only pay MSRP for like the bare minimum card, you're good to go if you know how to overclock. So, but if you're someone who doesn't want to mess with overclocking, or you're just someone who wants to guarantee a specific overclock performance level without having to worry about the silicon potential or the silicon lottery, then you would want to buy one of these. You would want to buy either the Aorus Elite or the Mercury Magnetic Air or the Nitro from Sapphire, etc. The Tai Chi from ASRock, whatever. So all of those cards. So this one, like 4096, 64 compute units, PCI Gen 5. It supports 8K resolution. It has multi-monitor support, blah, blah, blah. Recommended power supply, 850 watt, 3 8-pin. So fairly standard stuff. One thing about this card, though, the Aorus Elite, that I do want to point out, this card has 2 DisplayPort 2.1 and 2 HDMI 2.1. This is deviating from the standard of 3 DisplayPorts and 1 HDMI. So if you're someone who prefers HDMI, if you're someone who runs multi-monitor and you want to do, HDMI for some reason, because I don't know, whatever the reason is, because technically DisplayPort is superior. So I tend to prefer DisplayPort myself. So I don't like this. This is one thing I don't like about the Gigabyte card. I would have preferred if they did the standard triple DisplayPort and 1 HDMI. If they wanted to add a second HDMI, then they would do like triple DisplayPort plus 2 HDMI. But they didn't do that. They basically copied Sapphire, because Sapphire has been doing the 2 DisplayPort, 2 HDMI, and I don't like that about Sapphire, but they've been doing that for a while now on their flagship card. Now they don't do that on their MSRP level cards. Those have the standard triple DisplayPort, single HDMI. But Gigabyte is opting for dual DisplayPort, dual HDMI. So if you like HDMI, you're probably going to be okay with that. If you're someone who doesn't like HDMI and you want your triple DisplayPort monitor setup, then this is probably going to be a pass. Just saying. But I like the look of it. I do like the look of this card. It's got good RGB. It doesn't have like too much RGB. I think it has the right amount. And I really wish they would have illuminated the Radeon logo, though. That would have been like perfection if they did that. And if they did triple DisplayPort, but whatever. So that's what Gigabyte's doing with the Aorus Elite. Overall, this one looks like a decent card. And it was relatively easy to get if you went to Micro Center this morning. And from what I heard from people who managed to buy it from Newegg, it wasn't too challenging to get, because the stock was good. Now, looking at the gaming OC, this one, again, Gigabyte is doing dual DisplayPort, dual HDMI. Even on the regular gaming OC. So, I don't know why they're going with that, but they are sticking to that. This one also has triple 8-pin, which is interesting. I thought this was going to have dual 8-pin. I guess their gaming OC has triple 8-pin, and their non-OC, like the regular gaming, has dual 8-pin. So your Newegg order got canceled. Which one was that? Was it the Aorus? Was it this one? Or this one? Well, that's Gigabyte. Why did AMD ditch the Eyefinity stuff like 4-screen is now the max? They still have Eyefinity. What do you mean they ditched Eyefinity? If you do Eyefinity, you just set it up in Radeon settings. They still have it. You can do more than 4 screens. You have to use DisplayPort MST. You have to do multi-stream. Multi-stream over DisplayPort. You have to use daisy chaining on the monitors to do it. That's how it's always been, though. Alright, let's talk about ASUS next. So ASUS had 2 of them. They had the Tough and the Prime. Because of the GeForce Partner Program, ASUS, just like Gigabyte, ASUS is barred from selling the premium ASUS brands with Radeon cards. So you cannot get a Strix Radeon anymore, as far as I know, and you cannot get an Astral, or what used to be called the ASUS Matrix. So years ago, they used to sell ROG Astral equivalents. My HD 7970 is an ASUS Matrix Platinum, which in today's era would be an Astral. So yes, I have an ASUS Astral AMD card from like 2012. So you can't get one of those anymore. So now all they get is the Tough and the Prime. So the Prime, let's look at this one. So this one, up to 3030 megahertz is the boost clock. So not quite as fast as the Aorus Elite, but it is better than stock for the Tough. The Tough, oh no, I should say the Prime. This is the Prime. So so the Prime this is the OC edition. If it was the non-OC Prime, it would be at MSRP and it would have the stock reference clocks. No factory overclock. And then for the Tough has slightly higher factory overclock than the Prime's OC edition. So this one is 3080 megahertz. So it's just 20 megahertz short of the XFX Mercury and the Gigabyte Aorus Elite. So, but overall, this one, I think if you're someone who wants the standard triple DisplayPort 2.1 and single HDMI 2.1B, the Tough and the Prime got you covered there, because ASUS didn't deviate from the standard spec for the display outputs for either of these cards. So that I think is a good thing. So now we're gonna move on. But those are pretty basic graphics cards. I mean, they're not bad at all. Like if you like ASUS, you trust the brand, you trust their RMA policy, all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing wrong with them. In recent history, I haven't really heard of any serious issues with ASUS cards. So it's just, I personally think that there's better choices if you're looking for a Radeon card. The ASUS cards are fine. If you want, especially if you want just like a no nonsense, you just want to pay MSRP, you don't care about RGB, you don't care about if it has triple 8-pin, you don't care about dual BIOS, all that stuff, then you can just get like the Prime. And it's a no, what is the phrase? It's a no frills experience. It's just like, okay, it's just a graphics card. Especially if you're someone who's going to buy the graphics card, throw it in your computer case that doesn't have a side glass panel, meaning you'll never look at it and it sits there on the floor under the desk like an office PC. This would be fine for that use case. So, yeah. Let's go to ASRock next. So ASRock has 2 cards, but of those 2 cards, one of them has multiple variants. And I think ASRock will release more cards over time. But for launch day, ASRock had their flagship RX 9070 XT Tai Chi, and they also had the Steel Legend. They have the Steel Legend Dark and the regular Steel Legend. The regular Steel Legend is a white graphics card, and that was the one that they had a lot of at Micro Center. In fact, out of all the white colored graphics cards, the Steel Legend was the one that they had the highest quantity of. They had a lot of XFX white cards as well as Sapphire Pure. But I don't know, I guess Sapphire in general is very popular among AMD Radeon buyers, people who historically buy Radeon cards. They trust Sapphire. Sapphire's a well-known brand, so if they were looking for a white-colored graphics card, they most likely got a Sapphire Pure, unless they just straight up wanted MSRP, in which case, this morning, if you were at Micro Center, the Steel Legend White Edition, which is a standard Steel Legend, that one was in plenty supply. So it was very easy to get. Very easy to get. So, yeah, it has some subtle RGB, you know, it doesn't have too much. I don't understand why why do they insist on illuminating their branding, the Steel Legend brand? I think people would have rather, like, if I had to choose one, I'd rather they illuminate the Radeon logo as opposed to the Steel Legend logo, if not both. But that's something that I always complain about with these AIB cards. But this one is a decent one. I have one, like you guys know, I have that one ASRock A380. I mean, now that's a really, really low-end card, so it either works or it doesn't work. And it's fine. So I don't have a problem with ASRock recommending them if someone wants to get an AMD card. ASRock is relatively solid if you like the look of their cards. Now the Taichi, this one clocks up to 3.1 gigahertz. So this one also is the same as the Gigabyte Aorus Elite and the XFX Mercury. This one hits the same max boost clock. So props to the Micro Center salespeople, because they really know their stuff. Because when that guy saw that I wanted that XFX card that clocks the 3.1 stock, like out of the factory, and it wasn't available, he recommended this one as an alternative. And because he knows that this one is one of the ones that is a flagship card within that segment. And you can see the clock speeds match the flagship tier. So, yeah, this one also has triple DisplayPort and single HDMI. So it doesn't deviate from the standard, but it even has triple fingers. This one has 3 fingers. That is a huge plus. It's a triple slot, so it should have 3 fingers. I don't like when graphics cards are triple slot and they only have 2 fingers, because then they're more prone to sag. When they have the third finger helps prevent sag naturally. So this one, I would feel more confident using this with no sag brace because it has triple fingers. But considering how large it is, I would still recommend an anti-sag bracket. But yeah, this was a triple finger. It has the triple display. So this one has everything that I like about it, except it has the controversial 12-volt 2x6. It has the NVIDIA power cable on an AMD card.
MSI issued a BIOS for X670E Meg Ace for them 9950X3D, but then they retracted it. I already ordered the CPU. Should I be worried?
No, I wouldn't be worried about that. So the latest BIOS for the X870E motherboards already supports the 9950X3D, but those BIOSes I don't recommend for X870E. Now, X670E doesn't have that right now. That BIOS will probably get another revision. They probably retracted it because they want to release an official BIOS, not a beta BIOS. So I'm assuming that BIOS that they put on the website and then removed was a beta BIOS. Gigabyte has done this very often. So MSI is probably doing the same thing. Like, it's not the first time that I've heard of a motherboard manufacturer putting a BIOS up, and then a few hours later or a day later, they remove it, and then a next couple of days later, they put another one out. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. Interesting. This is a good comment, though, because I think a lot of people never even think about this. Like, they aren't even aware of stuff like that. But really what it is what probably happened is someone didn't flag the final regression test for that BIOS, and they accidentally, like, let it go through QC without it being fully regression tested. So that's probably one of the reasons. Or the reason is that's a beta BIOS and they're just going to bring the official one out and they don't want that one to they don't want that one to be on the site for whatever reason. So it could also be that there's a bug with that BIOS, and I don't know, that could also be a possibility. I think it probably didn't get the final flag, the final check for regression testing, if I had to guess. That's the most common reason why they do stuff like that. But yeah, great comment, because that's something that is the sort of question that people will see that, and they won't even know that they needed to ask that. Because that gives you guys more visibility into like what goes on with the BIOS updates. It's probably some QC check didn't get completed and they have to like run it through that or something, and then it'll go out probably, early next week, I would imagine. Because that CPU is coming out real soon. But what you can do, speaking of that, let's go here real quick. No, not there. X670 Ace. So what you can do, and you probably already know this, but just for those watching that are probably unaware of this sort of stuff, if you click on compatibility, and if you look here, it already lists, whoops, I didn't want to do that. Why did it become so big? What happened? Okay, 9950X3D is already listed as a CPU on the ACE support site. And it shows here latest beta BIOS. Latest beta BIOS for the 9900X3D. So this is not supposed to say this. This is supposed to always have a actual like file name. It should not say latest beta BIOS. Because if I go over here, this is not a beta BIOS. So what does that mean? Does that mean I'm supposed to download this one? This one is from October. So I don't know if this is right. So yeah, they're going to have to release something within the next couple of days because they've already revealed the 9950X3D's existence on their website. And they're not supposed to have done this. So someone at MSI done gone screwed up. Because this is not supposed to be here. This is not supposed to be publicly visible. Somebody turned on a flag by mistake, and they probably revealed that BIOS file. Then they were like, oh, it's not supposed to be launched yet. We need to hide it. So they probably hid it, but they forgot to remove it from the website, from the compatibility list. So oftentimes what people do, people who are searching for leaks, like people who want to do like leaked info, they'll constantly check sites like this, motherboard websites, to look, hey, is it revealed? What's the thing? Like, they're trying to get the info on it. They want to see the CPU speed. For example, here we can tell from here, the stepping is B0. The TDP is officially going to be 170 watts. And the base clock is 4.3 gigahertz. Which means that it's exactly the same spec as the 9950X, which means not only is the 9950X3D going to be extremely good in gaming performance, just like the 9800X3D is, it will also be top-notch in productivity and multi-thread, because it has the same clocks and TDP as the 9950X. This is not true for the 7950X3D. That CPU had a lower base clock. That one was 4.2 versus 4.5 on the 7950X, and it had a lower TDP. The 7950X was limited to 120 watts TDP versus 170 on the 7950X. So now we can tell already that the 9950X3 is going to be probably the best CPU of the year. Just, it's going to be straight up the best. For consumer desktop, 9950X3D is going to be AMD's flagship. It's going to not only deliver the best gaming performance, it's going to deliver the best productivity experience as well. So yeah, this is going to be like a beast of a CPU. So yeah, MSI, someone on MSI accidentally like posted this too early is probably what happened. And they removed it from the download. They forgot to remove the listing on the site. But anyway, in a couple of days, I would say probably like Monday next week or Tuesday at the latest, MSI will put that BIOS out. They'll put the official one out. That'll probably be $699, $700. Yes. I would not be surprised at all if it's $700. I'm expecting it to be $700. Let's put it that way. I expect $699 on launch day for the 9950X3D. Okay, so let's keep going here. There's not too many more of these. So Red Devil, PowerColor Red Devil. This is PowerColor's flagship. This is their highest end graphics card for the, is this the product page? Okay, so it has dual BIOS. All the flagships have dual BIOS. It has Dr. Moss power module, optimum heat pipe arrangement, personalized ARGB lighting effect, high efficiency ring blade fans. So they're going with those. 3 8-pin power connectors. Oh, it also says it has, what is this? This is just voltage regulation. Supports PCI 5.0 x16. Oh, one notable thing about the Red Devil is that it uses PTM 7950 for the thermal material, the thermal pad material between the GPU die and the cooling heatsink. PTM is very good in the sense that it lasts very long. It doesn't dry out like thermal paste does over several years. So if you're someone who keeps your graphics card for like 5 years, 7 years, PTM will ensure that its thermal transfer performs the same 5 years out with launch day performance, thermal performance. So that's very good. Now, this is not the only one that does this, but I am glad that PowerColor called this out because they actually tell people, hey, we've got PTM on the Red Devil. That is very good to know. And this is one of the reasons why this was one of my backup choices this morning. If I couldn't get the Mercury, if I couldn't get the Nitro, then I was like, okay, Red Devil. But I didn't feel like buying Red Devil because I already have a Red Devil XTX. I kind of wanted to get a different brand this time around. So that was one of the main reasons why. I'm also not a huge fan of the Red Devil styling this time around. But yeah, it's PowerColor's Red Devil. I feel like it's a you love it or hate it styling thing. I'm not a huge fan of it myself. I'm okay with it. I don't hate it. I mean, I literally have a PowerColor Red Devil limited edition 7900 XTX. But I'm like, do I really want to buy another Red Devil? I'd rather get like another brand just to compare. So I didn't want to buy another Red Devil at the end of the day. But it's fine. It's a good card. PTM, really good thermal transfer. It's quiet. Dual BIOS, triple 8-pin. You can overclock it. You know, it's got all that stuff. So it checks all the things that like the Nitro, the Mercury, the Taichi, the Aorus Elite, all of them. This one is right up there with all of them in terms of like the build quality and stuff. Does any RDNA 4 card have? No, because there's no reference card. Only the AMD reference cards had USB-C for PSVR 2. So none of these, to my knowledge, and I've looked at a bunch of these cards since this morning, none of them have USB-C, unfortunately. None of them. They're all going to be either triple DisplayPort 2.1, and one HDMI 2.1B, or they're going to be like in the case of Gigabyte and Sapphire, some of them will have dual DisplayPort and dual HDMI, but no USB-C on any of them. All right, the other one they have is the Hellhound. The Hellhound has been a very popular card among like enthusiasts that are buying like Radeon 7000 series. This one was very good. This one comes in white, as you guys can see here. It also has a standard black version, this one. So it's an okay card. I mean, if you like the styling, it's more understated compared to the Red Devil. You won't really notice the Hellhound branding anywhere unless you're literally like looking at the backplate of the card. So it's very kind of like brand neutral looking. So it's almost kind of like it's a stealth card. Like there's not a whole lot going on. It has a little bit of RGB. But yeah, it's a decent card too. Like this one is slightly above MSRP because it offers things like dual BIOS and like they're using the PTM on there and all that other stuff. So it's got a little bit of RGB. So it's a little bit over MSRP, but it's actually pretty close to MSRP. And then finally, the Reaper. The Reaper is their MSRP card. So if you're someone who literally, you don't want to pay any more than $599, like $599 max, nothing more, the Reaper. The Reaper is the closest you will get to an AMD reference card if there actually was an AMD reference card. It has the stock AMD reference clock speeds, boost clock speeds. It has a stock power limit of like 304 watts. You know, no nonsense 2-slot cooler. So it's not this chonky triple slot thing. It doesn't need 3 fingers. It's a very standard design. Some people might outright say that it looks bland and boring. But it, like I said, this thing is the closest to a reference card if there was a reference card. So if you want a $599 card and nothing more, the Reaper is it. It's got PTM. It's $599 and it's got PTM. That's all you need to know. It's got PTM and it's $599. No RGB, no nonsense. If you're running it in an office PC, if you're running it in a case that doesn't have a side panel to look at it, get the Reaper. Save money. It's good. It's good. It's quiet. It's good. It's no nonsense. It's basic stuff. It's basic stuff. Look at the specs. Check it out. Look at that. Reference spec. Reference spec. Straight up reference spec. 1 HDMI, triple DisplayPort. Triple DisplayPort. So very, very basic stuff. Alright, that's the Reaper. Alright, we only have 2 brands left. We've got Sapphire, which we kind of talked about earlier, and then we have XFX. We'll talk about Sapphire now. So Sapphire is probably among AMD Radeon enthusiasts know the Sapphire name. I can't think of anyone who has purchased Radeon cards in the past that has no idea what Sapphire is. Like, I can't think of anyone that has gotten Radeon cards throughout their history of building PCs and has no idea who Sapphire Technologies is. Sapphire is the Toyota brand of Radeon. They are, and what that means, for those who don't know what that means, that's me basically saying that Sapphire is high quality, reliable, dependable. They make very good GPUs. They're based in Hong Kong. This is a Hong Kong-based company. Whereas a lot of those other ones are based out of Taiwan. This one is actually from Hong Kong from the start. They've always been there. So they are rock solid. Like, I have never had a problem with a Sapphire card ever. So my very first graphics card, the X850 XT, is a Sapphire card. And guess what? It still works. It still works. The blower fan in it is really old and it's kind of loud, but it still works. That graphics card is what? Like, I don't even know how old that card's from, like 2005, 2006. Now, architecture was from like older, but I built that PC in like 2006. That was my very first PC in 2006. So that card is almost 20 years old. And it still works. And I've got some other Sapphire cards over the years. We're literally streaming on a Sapphire card right now. We're using the Sapphire 7900 XTX Nitro to encode this live stream and broadcast on the internet right now. So, and I have had no problems, rock solid in the over 2 years now that I've had this card. Is that right? Almost 2 years. Is that right? Yeah, I got it in March of 2023. So it's literally the 2-year mark. I've had this Nitro from Sapphire for 2 years. Flawless. Flawless. Silent. Silence is golden. Chonky card. Triple finger. RGB light bar. Radeon logo lights up. It checks everything. Now, however, this one, speaking of the 9070 XT, this one changes things up. This one went with the NVIDIA and Dell, because NVIDIA and Dell worked together to design the infamous 12-volt high-power cable. And Sapphire adapted the cable and used that for this graphics card. So this is the only one that has this from Sapphire. All the other cards that are 9070 XT, 9070, they're all using the standard dual or triple 8-pin, but the Nitro in particular is using the NVIDIA and Dell power connector. So if you're a fan of this grill, some people don't like the grill. I think the grill looks okay, but I think it kind of like it. The only thing it does is like it hurts airflow, if we're being practical, but it's okay. And then same thing, this backplate is magnetically attached. It kind of restricts airflow, like, so I don't know, but they put it here for style. You don't have to have it on there, but it helps hide the cable that has to route through this flow through over here. Sapphire is one of the most innovative companies when it comes to the AIBs. Sapphire and ASUS, I'll say those two in particular, have done the most innovative stuff. ASUS, not so much in terms of like GPU innovation, but Sapphire, ASUS has done more on like motherboards in terms of innovating, and then other products in their consumer line, like monitors and things. But Sapphire was the first to market with the flow-through design. I don't think people remember that, so I always have to call that out because people are like, "Oh, NVIDIA invented flow-through." That's not true at all. NVIDIA did not invent flow-through. Sapphire invented flow-through because the Sapphire Tri-X from 2015, literally a graphics card from about 10 years ago from Sapphire, had the flow-through design. It had the flow-through capability. This was the R9 Fury Tri-X. In fact, let's go look at that card. R9 Fury. I have that card. R9 Fury. And we go down here. Sapphire Tri-X R9 Fury. There it is. Flow-through design. Short PCB. From a graphics card from Sapphire. From the year July 10th, 2015. PCI Gen 3. So they were the first to do it. So that's what I mean when I say that they're probably one of the most innovative brands or companies when it comes to innovating on GPU cooling design. They always push the envelope on design and functionality. So they did that plastic grill though that adds like 55 cents in the BOM. Which one? On the Fury? Talking about Fury or the Nitro? The Nitro is metal. The Fury is plastic. R9 Fury. The Tri-X. They actually did two. They did the Tri-X had flow-through. This is a metal backplate, but you're right, this is a plastic shroud. And they also did the Nitro R9 Fury. This was when the Nitro brand was relatively new. This one had a little bit of flow-through. Not as much flow-through. This one was the one that was like factory overclocked by like 150 megahertz or whatever. You're talking about the Nitro Plus is plastic? This is plastic? Oh, you mean the grill? The grill's plastic? Is the grill removable? Does anybody know if that grill's removable? That's the sort of thing that I would remove. It blocks the light bar and it blocks airflow. So to me, that's kind of like, I don't know how innovative this is. You know, like this is more like style over function. The Fury lives again. Vega 56 to 90. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, it does have this kind of vibe. I was saying that at the beginning of the stream. I was saying how the 9070 and the 9070 XT, it feels like Fury and Fury X and Vega 56 and Vega 64 and also 5700 and 5700 XT all over again. It feels kind of like the Chain Link edition. I'm surprised that this one doesn't boost to 3100 megahertz though. This one only boosts to 3060. So I don't know. Like I feel like knowing what I know about Sapphire's build quality and the cooling performance of the Nitro Plus, historically they could have easily set this to like 3.1 gigahertz, just like XFX and Gigabyte did for their flagship cards. So, but I don't know, maybe they were like, well, you know, it has that special cable. Maybe we don't want to push it too much. But yeah, the reality is, if you're concerned about the 12-volt high-power cable on the Sapphire Nitro, you shouldn't be too concerned with it, because keep in mind, this graphics card only pulls 300, it's like 340 watt TDP out of the box. You can overclock it, raising the power limit, but even if you do that, the max it's going to do is like 370 watts. So 370 watts is still like over 200 watts less power than the 5090. And the 5090 is the one that's like melting the cables, because or is most prone to melting cables because it has such a high power limit. Whereas this card is nowhere close to the amount of power that the 5090 pulls, so it's not really a concern for most people, or it shouldn't be a concern for most people. As long as we're not trying to do like some insane overclock or some kind of like custom VBIOS and shunt mod the power limit and pull 600 watts over. Yeah, if you're doing that, then that's a problem. That could become a problem with the cable melting, because Sapphire followed the spec. They literally followed in NVIDIA's footsteps. NVIDIA said you do not need voltage regulation, power balancing like on 30 series. So Sapphire was like, are you sure? And NVIDIA's like, yeah, we fixed the problem, man. It's not a problem anymore. So Sapphire's like, okay, yeah. But you know what? Sapphire didn't fully trust NVIDIA. Sapphire doesn't fall for those Jedi mind tricks. They're not that weak-minded. So they did do something. So let's look at the review. That's a great segue into the review, but we haven't actually covered the XFX cards or the other Sapphire, so we're going to run through this really, really quick. I just wanted to go to this. So there's a review on Tech Power. Obviously, we're looking at it right now. You can see how heavy this card is. Almost 1.6 kilograms, or almost 1,600 grams. Triple finger. It's got the 3 fingers, so it's not going to sag. But it has the dual DisplayPort and the dual HDMI, which I'm not a huge fan of. There is the infamous connector. It gives you its nice sapphire blue color on the adapter cable. Triple 8-pin. This is another reason why I wouldn't be too concerned about the cable melting, because it's not a 4 8-pin like a 4090 and a 5090. It is a triple 8-pin like a 3090 and a 3090 Ti. See how that cable goes like that? curves like this. So it's gonna have to bend. But the cool thing about it is it makes for a very clean look because you don't see the cable hanging off the side having to be bent. It still has to bend though. You can see that. The other thing too, this is, okay, why do I say that this is the Toyota of graphics cards? So check this out. Sapphire even put padding here. You know why they put this foam here? They didn't put this to cut down on noise, although this will have an effect on cutting down noise a little bit. It's going to absorb noise, sort of. That's not the reason why that's here. Why do you think they put this foam padding on top of the flow-through heatsink? These are the subtle details that prove that Sapphire is very high quality. Why is this here? Nero got it. Heat sinks are sharp. Why would you need to like cover the sharp heat sinks? What's the reason for doing this? Why do you think they did this? Abrasion to what? This is the kind of stuff that proves to me that this company knows how to build graphics cards. Cable cutting. Yes. You know why they have this here? To prevent, if someone were to use a custom cable, Sapphire has no visibility or control over what the end user decides to use. If they use the included adapter cable, this thing has thick braiding on it to protect it from getting cut by the heatsink. But Sapphire knows that they put the connector in an area where the cable can come into contact with these fins. So they include foam padding as a protection to buffer so that the cable can lay on top of this, and it doesn't matter what sort of cable the end user is using, it will prevent the fin array from slowly fraying the cable. Like, they have no idea what the user is going to do. They could have easily just left this bare. They didn't need to put that foam padding on there. They put it on there to prevent custom cables from abrasion, from fraying on the fin stacks due to vibration over a long period of time. Because remember, you got to think about it. The graphics card, the fans spinning on the graphics card create micro vibration. So if a cable is resting on top of this fin stack, there's going to be micro vibration from the fan underneath spinning. So over time, that could potentially, depending on what sort of cable the end user is using, it could fray the cable. It could weaken the cable, the outside buffer of the cable. So hence the reason why they do that. In fact, I actually have my mouse, this Logitech MMO mouse. Look at this. It has a braided cable, but look how frayed it is right here. Look at that frayed cable. Look at this. Look at that frayed cable. Frayed cable. To prevent this from happening, fraying of the cable, of the braided cable, I don't even know how that happened to me. To prevent that from happening to the dangerous 12-volt high-power cable, they put this on there. So this is another subtle detail that proves to me that Sapphire knows what they're doing, and this is very high quality. They go the extra mile. They go the extra mile. And that's why they are my top choice for AIB graphics cards. They were also the first to do, so look at that pad right there. They were also the first to do the back plate as a heatsink. They were the first one to do this. When people started putting back plates on graphics cards, they literally just put them there for looks. Sapphire was the first to put the thermal pads on the back plate to use the back plate as a heatsink, and then everyone started copying them. So they were the first with flow-through. They were the first to sink heat over the back plate, and they go the extra mile and put stuff like this to prevent you from fraying your power cable. So this is actually really good. And then also, okay, here, NVIDIA was like, hey, you don't need to follow 30 series. That's not the spec. You must follow the spec. The spec means you build that cable like it's going on a 5090 and a 4090, not like a 3090. So you got to make it unsafe. So Sapphire's like, okay, well, if we have to follow the spec, unfortunately, we're going to follow the spec, but they don't fully trust NVIDIA. So what they did was they put these fuses. They have dual fuses over that big blob, so that if things start going sideways, and it's like, hey, the power balance is tilting, it's biasing way to one side, there's something wrong with the input coming in, it'll blow a fuse. So the card it'll basically save the whole card. It'll save the VRAM and the chip from dying if there's a cable issue, let's say. If there's a special event with the 12-volt connector, let's just say that. So they do have some level of protection mechanism built in, but it is more of like a last resort, like, hey, let's blow the fuse so that at least the card survives. Now, someone's still going to have to repair it. Like, they're still going to have to put a new fuse there. They'll have to probably replace the connector. But the whole, like, the chip is safe. The VRAM is safe. The VRMs most likely will also be safe. So it prevents catastrophic damage to the graphics card. So they did at least do that. So I will give them credit for going slightly extra mile in terms of like putting like these two fuses on here to protect it. So that's actually pretty good. So, but because they have to follow the spec is like, hey, you gotta build it like 5090. You can't build it like 3090 because that's not the spec. So they're, unfortunately, it's following the same stupid spec where it's one big blob on the 12 volt and there's no way to current balance because that's not NVIDIA's specification, and you have to follow NVIDIA's specification because you have to follow the rules. And Sapphire wants to be a good corporate citizen, so they're going to follow the rules, but they're going to put some extra stuff in here behind the scenes just in case something bad happens. So, again, they are using the backplate to sink the heat from the VRAM. This is very, very good because if you're someone who runs multi-monitor with different resolutions and different refresh rates, the VRAM has to run at max speed, which means that the VRAM will run at a higher idle temperature, typically over 50 degrees Celsius. And Sapphire is one of the very few AIBs that goes the extra mile to not only soak the heat on the VRAM through the top of the cooler, but also from the backplate. They siphon heat on both sides of the VRAM. So these guys really, really go the extra mile in terms of quality. And that is probably the reason why I have never had a problem with these cards, because I use these cards like as a power user. I'm running them with multi-monitors, 4K plus 1440. All of them are high refresh, so the VRAM clock is maxed out all the time. That means the RAM chips are running hot all the time I'm using the computer. So having something like this goes the extra mile in maintaining lower operating temperatures while doing things other than gaming. So yeah, this is a good card. Hynix GDDR6. So I think most of them are going to be Hynix. Some of them might be Samsung. Let me skip all the way to the... Let's look at the temperatures and fan noise. Temperatures and fan noise. Sapphire Nitro, ASUS Tough, and Mercury. So, Sapphire is super quiet. Like, you won't even hear it. It's like 1300 RPM, but memory runs hot while gaming at 90 Celsius because the fans aren't spinning that fast at all. But 90C on the RAM is totally fine. Like, that's nothing to be concerned with. The Mercury, 82 on the memory, 69 on hotspot, 53 on GPU, but it is going to be the loudest one because it is almost 1600 RPM. So that's the reason why its temperatures are a lot lower, because the fan is spinning a lot faster. So that doesn't mean you can't change it. So my personal preference for like stock operation, I want it to be as quiet as possible. Stock operation. So I actually prefer the way the Nitro behaves stock, and I guess the Pulse as well, because I really like this 26, 25 dBA, because I know that that is so quiet that you will never hear that over your case fans. In fact, your case fans are louder than this, unless your case fans aren't even running. So this is like dead quiet. The XFX Mercury, the one that I actually wanted, is significantly louder than the Nitro. But it's because, remember, XFX is running at that 3.1 gigahertz boost clock. And that means they're running at a higher power limit. And that means typically the voltage is probably set a little bit higher. It's running at a higher voltage offset. So this, I prefer this over this as stock, because if I want the temperatures to be lower, I can just tune the fan profile to be lower. But I would rather do that as an option rather than like, oh, it's louder at stock, so then I have to tune the fans to make it quieter, but then I have to also be aware of like what it's doing to the temperatures. So yeah, this is very, very good. And then the quiet BIOS on ASUS is also really good. So the ASUS Tough also is equivalent. So look at it like this. ASUS Quiet is equal to Sapphire Nitro Stock. So that's what I mean by like it's super quiet, but it's not really spinning that fast. And that's the reason why it's so quiet. So fan noise, literally like industry leader. This is the chart topper out of the AIBs in terms of fan noise. And then if we do the cooler comparison, if you noise normalize, meaning you set them all to 35 dBA, which means you're going to make the Sapphire just as loud as the XFX. Now look at what happens. So the XFX at 35 dBA with the same power limit, now ASUS and Sapphire are defeating the XFX Mercury, which means ASUS and Sapphire have more metal, or they're doing something different with the way that they're siphoning the heat from the GPU die. Either they're using some kind of PTM and XFX is not using PTM, or something's going on there, or maybe it's just simply the fact that XFX is running a higher voltage on the core to guarantee the 3.1 gigahertz, which is probably the realistic answer here, or the realistic reason. And that's the reason why the XFX is underperforming, or it's not underperforming, it's just like Sapphire is outperforming it because it just shows you how much better their cooler is. So there's that. And then the memory temperature, when you noise normalize, here is where it gets really interesting. So when you noise normalize, not only is Sapphire the same as the ASUS Tough on the GPU core, Sapphire's memory temperature is lower than all of them when you noise normalize 35 dBA. So 77 degrees on the Nitro on the memory and 49 degrees on the core. This is the absolute best one in terms of the coolers. In terms of the cooler design, the Nitro is objectively the absolute best one, at least based off of these results here. The Nitro, not the Pulse. You can see the Pulse is losing here, but the Pulse is right up there with Tough and Mercury, which are higher end models than the Pulse. So see what I mean? This is what I mean by Sapphire exudes quality, because even the entry level Pulse, when noise normalized, it matches the flagship XFX Mercury and the more expensive ASUS Tough. And the Pulse is significantly smaller than those cards. So, very, very interesting stuff. And the Nitro just wins it hands down. Okay, power consumption. So this card pulls about 350 watts in all scenarios. Furmark, Cyberpunk, Stalker 2, Spider-Man 2, ray tracing, it doesn't really change too much. Idle power consumption, 10 watts. AMD RDNA 4 fixed the high idle power. And then with multi-monitor, so this would be me. This is me using it, 20 watts. So, yeah, that's good. It's right up there in terms of efficiency with NVIDIA's cards now. You can see 50 series, 40 series, 30 series, and then Sapphire is right there. So, yeah, it's good because the idle power consumption on AMD with multi-monitor alternate refresh was significantly worse than NVIDIA for a long time. And it has to do with the blanking interval and AMD's rule in how they deal with that. And basically AMD is like, if you have a monitor that is, let's say you have a 4K monitor that's 144 hertz, then you have another monitor that's 1440p, and it's either going to be 144 hertz, 165 hertz, doesn't matter. You have two high refresh monitors that are different resolutions. AMD's driver literally is programmed to say, okay, if there are more than one monitor and they are both high refresh, I max out VRAM all the time. Max out VRAM all the time, 24/7. I don't care. Max it out. High idle power consumption, high VRAM temperature, high VRAM clock speeds. That is the rule how Radeon cards have handled multi-monitor refresh. So, and that's the reason why you look at the, well, okay, I don't know. Where is the, what is going on here? These are not, wait, where's the 7900 XTX? Because this is wrong. Anyway, they're not on here. They don't have that card on here right now, but they were like 90 watts on RDNA 3. So 20 watts is a huge drop from 90 watts. So let's put it that way. That's a 70 watt drop on idle power. So, or just multi-monitor idle power. So video playback, again, 31 watts. That one doesn't really matter. And then gaming, here's the one that actually matters. 350 watts. So it's basically the same as a 3080. It's actually very similar to a stock 700 XTX, which is very interesting. Oh, that's right, because the Nitro runs at a higher power limit than stock. The stock 9070 XT should be like 304, so around 300 watts or so. This thing is pulling a little bit more than that. You can see that here, which means it's basically the same amount of power as a stock 7900 XTX, and it performs similar to one. So that is interesting to note. And then this is the ray tracing. Ray tracing, same exact power consumption. Maximum, so this is going to be Furmark, same exact power consumption, doesn't really change. And then VSync, 81 watts. So again, it's now just as efficient as NVIDIA's cards when VSync to 60 hertz. So if you're someone who caps your games at 60 FPS, and or like, I don't know, your game that you're playing doesn't scale beyond 60 FPS, because there's some games out there that do that, like, I don't know, Genshin Impact, for example, you're only going to be pulling like 80 watts. So it's the same as the NVIDIA cards. It's like 40 series are always around like that 80 watt range. Unless you have a higher end card, like a 5080 that's pulling 100 watts. The 5090, wherever that is, that's going to be like significantly higher. So, yeah, the efficiency, you can see how they've improved the efficiency over RDNA 3, RDNA 2, RDNA 1. RDNA 1, RDNA 2, even at 60 hertz, those in a game would still pull quite a bit of power. Whereas now it's at parity with NVIDIA. It's still a little bit behind 50 series, but I would say in general, in terms of power consumption, RDNA 4 is equal to the 40 series in terms of energy efficiency. So it's almost like it's only like one generation behind NVIDIA. But 40 series was so efficient when it came out that it's like, okay, the fact that it's now as efficient as 40 series and 50 series didn't really move the needle that much in terms of efficiency. It's basically parity with NVIDIA. So this is going to come down to like software things in terms of determining any inherent advantages now. And then power spikes. So power spikes, that's pretty high, 417 watts. That's still not terrible though. This type of power spike is not enough to shut off your computer. Like if you have a lousy power supply, or if you have a power supply that's too strict in terms of its OCP threshold, overcurrent protection threshold. What that means is that you could be playing a game and all of a sudden your computer shuts off. So if you've ever had that problem happen, you're probably on a high-end or high-wattage graphics card and your power supply doesn't like your graphics card. So what happens is you're playing your game with an uncapped frame rate and all of a sudden your entire computer shuts off, or it like clicks, turns off, and then turns back on. That's your power supply. And that's because of your graphics card causing the power supply to think that you're about to blow up your computer. So it turns on a safety feature called overcurrent protection, and it shuts off the power supply. It shuts off the power delivery to the computer, and you're like, what happened? Did I trip a breaker? No. Your power supply thinks that your graphics card was about to explode, even though it wasn't. So these numbers are good indicators of telling you if you're going to trip OCP. That's the whole reason why. Well, that's not the whole reason. That's one of the reasons why Tech Power Up includes the spikes, the 20 millisecond spikes. So I can tell you that the 6900 XT, I can make it shut off my Seasonic power supply. In fact, literally using stable diffusion with a 6900 XT will cause my old Seasonic power supply. This is a 1000 watt Seasonic Prime titanium, 80 plus titanium. My 6900 XT will make that power supply shut off my entire computer. Easily. So, these numbers are really good. So the Nitro, that's 417. I don't know if this will cause that power supply to shut off, because that's like more than 200 watts lower than the spikes on the 6900 XT. 3090 Ti can also shut off my power supply. In fact, the 6800 XT can do it. So I'm guessing if it's over 500 watts, it can do it on the spikes. I think that's the threshold. So 4090 can do it also. So, but see, this is good info. So it's good. The power spikes are not any different from RDNA 3, but RDNA 3 was tolerable, we'll say. Conclusion. Good overall performance. RT performance improved extremely. Oh, I didn't even look at the results. Let's look at the results. Let's look at the average. Okay, so average 1080p performance, 177 FPS. So it's relatively close to 5070 Ti, and that means it's also relatively close to the XTX. You can see that it's about 6 frames less than a 5070 Ti. So that's not too bad, considering you can actually buy a 9070 XT for the MSRP, or slightly over MSRP if you want one of the factory overclocked variants with the fancy dual BIOS and the 888 pins. If you're willing to pay extra for those features, you're getting a pretty good graphics card for this generation. This is probably going to win Best GPU of the Year because it has the whole value package and everything. So yeah, really good. And then if we look at the 1440, so 1440p, again, it's like 4 to 5 FPS if we round these up. They're both like, okay, so it's like, what is that? 5 FPS less than the Ti, the 5070 Ti. So again, it's like really close to the 5070 Ti while being cheaper and offering similar functionality minus multi-frame gen. But who here is actually going to use multi-frame gen beyond the regular frame gen option? So because of the latency. So and I'm someone who usually speaks very positive of frame gen, but like I only use frame gen out of necessity for games where the developers require you to use frame gen, and there's not a lot of developers that actually require frame gen. Capcom is the only one that I know of that requires frame gen for Monster Hunter Wilds. Like if you don't use frame gen, yeah, you don't have to use frame gen, but if you don't use frame gen, you're in for a very bad experience with that game because that game is just insanely hard to run. For some unknown reason, it's like super hard to run. It is incredibly CPU demanding, as I showed in my video from last week for Monster Hunter's launch. And then it also is very GPU demanding too. And we're probably going to do a GPU comparison video specifically for Monster Hunter Wilds in the near future here, featuring the 9070 XT. So stay tuned for that. But overall though, like this is solid performance numbers at this price point for 1440p. Like maxing out 1440, averaging over 120 FPS. Like that's really good. And then for 4K, so I don't consider this a good 4K graphics card. This is what I consider like an entry-level 4K graphics card. Why do I say entry-level 4K graphics card? Mainly because I consider, like, if you want to play at 4K resolution, the minimum VRAM that you must have is 16 gigabytes of VRAM. And this card has 16 gigabytes of VRAM, which means it is minimum spec for 4K gaming. Also, again, you can see here, it's average 79.5. You can round that up. We can say 80 frames per second at 4K. Those are respectable numbers for a card that I don't actually consider designed for 4K because it's a 256-bit bus. Typically for 4K, you want a 384 or wider, like in the case of the 5090 being 512, for example. So that's why I don't really consider this a 4K GPU, but that doesn't mean you can't use it for 4K gaming. The problem is the VRAM is going to be devoured as newer titles come out, and 4K with high resolution textures is going to demand so much VRAM that I don't think this card is the optimal choice for 4K, which is unfortunate because as far as I know, this is it from AMD, unless AMD has like a secret project and they plan on releasing another higher end card later this year, which that remains to be seen. There are some rumors circulating about that, but I don't expect AMD to release anything this year that will be meant for 4K gaming. So this is pretty much it, which is a little underwhelming for people who are really enthusiastic about the 9070 XT, because if you're on 4K and you like the 9070 XT and you're considering a 9070 XT for your 4K OLED or whatever, it will work. You guys can see 80 FPS on average, but I look at it as a longevity. How long will it be relevant for 4K with 16 gigabytes of VRAM? You know what I'm saying? So that is my main concern with this GPU. Also, the memory bus, it's not wide enough. You can see that at this resolution, the XTX pulls ahead of it. The 4080 pulls ahead of it slightly. The 5070 Ti, this card and that card are very, very similar. The main reason why the 5070 Ti, I think, is beating the XT is because of the GDDR7. So NVIDIA opted to use GDDR7. However, GDDR7 is not going to solve the problem with running out of VRAM. When you max out VRAM, you max out VRAM. There's no coming back from that. You're going to get Stutterville. You get stutters as soon as you run out of VRAM. It doesn't matter if you're using GDDR9 or GDDR8 or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. If you fill up the VRAM, that's it. You're cooked. There's nothing, the GPU can't do anything. It can't cope with that. So that's the reason why, longevity-wise, I don't think either of these cards, the 9070 XT nor the 5070 Ti, are optimal choices for 4K gaming in 2025. Because I'm thinking about it like, if someone buys this card, I expect that they're going to keep it for at least 3 years. At least 3 years. Because you should, if you're someone who wants to see the full value proposition of your GPU purchase, you want 3 years because 3 years is typically your warranty period. After 3 years, your card is out of warranty. So if something happens, that's it. You got to go buy a new one. So 3 years is typically the, like, let's say the best lifespan, the optimal time of life for the GPU. After 3 years, it no longer has warranty. If something breaks, you got to buy a new one. Doesn't matter. Unless you're buying some kind of like special protection plan from Newegg, extended warranty from Micro Center, whatever. But typically those don't go beyond 3 years. They're typically 2 years or 3 years or 1 year. And they don't go beyond 3 years. So even if you purchase one of those, it doesn't really do anything except give you the convenience of not having to deal with ASUS or Sapphire or whoever the company is that made the card, because you can just go straight to the retailer to get them to give you another one. So but again, you're capped at 3 years. So that's the reason why I tell people 3 years minimum, then 5 years, then 7 years. After 7 years, if you still have the same graphics card at 7 years, you are using a dinosaur graphics card and you need to consider upgrading because you are totally missing out. So, I think about that. Like, if I'm using this for 4K for the next 3 years, how well will this card keep up with 4K demands from newer games? It'll probably handle it fine if you're willing to use upscaling and just render the game at 1440p, or in some cases, lower resolutions and just upscale up to 4K. If you're okay with that, this card will probably do 3 years at 4K totally fine. But I think most people don't like the idea of gaming at 4K and always having to rely on upscaling. Although, even realistically speaking, even higher end cards like the 4090 have to rely on upscaling at 4K because 4K is just so demanding. So you look at these numbers. 80 FPS for the 9070 XT, 109 FPS for the 4090. So that's like a 30 FPS difference about. The cards are significantly different in price. But I look at this chart and it's like, okay, realistically, the 5090 is going to age the best for 4K gaming, assuming the connector doesn't burn out on the third year or the second year or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Knock on wood. For cable melting problems on that card. But just because the bar is so much higher, you know, like that one's going to age the best for 4K gaming compared to all these other ones. But the 4080, the 5070 Ti, the XTX, the 9070 XT, all of them are kind of in that like 80 frame rate average, 80 to 85 frames per second average. So they're all within 5 frames of each other, which means they're all going to age pretty much the same at the end of the day. The only one that's going to probably outlast the others is the 7900 XTX because it has 24 gigabytes of VRAM. And all these other cards, including the 9070 XT and the 5070 Ti, only have 16 gigabytes of VRAM. And if you want a game at 4K, The 16 gigabytes is going to be that Achilles heel that kneecaps all of those GPUs, and the XTX will be the only one at the end of the day that can keep up as the VRAM buffer keeps filling up with these newer games. So anyway, so if you want to buy this for 4K, I'm not going to say no. If anyone wants to do that, it's totally fine for 4K. For 3 years, it'll probably get by. I mean, FSR 4 is a really good thing that it has that the older cards don't have. It's basically feature parity with NVIDIA now. It's basically as efficient. It's not, it's a little bit less efficient than 50 series. It's basically the same efficiency as 40 series. So if that makes any sense. So I wouldn't worry too much about like the efficiency. Basically, AMD has tied NVIDIA in so many areas this generation. They've closed the gap on a lot of things. The only thing where they still trail behind by like a whole generation is probably ray tracing. But again, that's very game dependent. But overall, I think this is a really good GPU. Best GPU of 2025, hands down. Not even the XTX with the crappy RT and the Unreal Engine 5. No, I don't agree. Because VRAM is the king now. VRAM has become the king. Do you really think that RT performance in 3 years from now on a 4080 is going to matter? Who here thinks that the 4080 will be good at handling games 3 years from now that are like using RT? Compared to like newer cards that come out 3 years from now. This is the reason why the RT thing is kind of like a fallacy at the end of the day. Like, this is the reason why I've never put too much stock into like ray tracing performance. Because you look at the 2080 Ti. The 2080 Ti can't keep up with RT today. It can't. Even the 3080 can't keep up with RT today. So, the same thing's going to hold true for the 4080. The 4080 will handle RT better, but you guys aren't understanding what I'm saying. I'm talking about gaming at 4K gaming with the high RT. And we're talking like 4K gaming from games that are 3 years out from now. Do you really think that games coming out in 2028 at 4K resolution with high resolution texture packs are going to be dealt with well with 16 gigabyte graphics cards? Do you see what I'm saying? We're seeing VRAM becoming the king. Like, VRAM is becoming the most important thing. And one of the reasons why the 5090 is so expensive is because it has 32 gigabytes of VRAM. So this is why at the end of the day, if I had to choose, if I was forced to game at 4K for the next 3 years, meaning you cannot use 1080p. Now, you can use upscaling, but you cannot use 1080p. You cannot use 1440p. Those are, like, banned for, like, 3 years. Then, out of all these cards, I would feel most confident using the XTX. Because I don't have to worry about VRAM with that card. The 4080 Super, the 5070 Ti, the 9070 XT, those all only have 16 gigs of VRAM. And we're talking 4K, guys. 4K. Max textures. 4K is where the VRAM becomes a huge problem. So, this is the reason why I don't think the 9070 XT is a good 4K graphics card. It is an okay 4K graphics card. It is not what I call the ideal 4K graphics card. So it's a little unfortunate that AMD doesn't have what I consider a 4K graphics card, which is a true successor to the 7900 XTX. Now, what the Nitro or what the 9070 XT is actually the successor to the 7800 XT. But none of the reviewers seem to have caught on to that. But realistically, the segment that the 9070 XT occupies is actually what was supposed to be the 7800 XT. And you look at the 7800 XT, going from a 7800 XT to a Nitro, this is a pretty big leap overall. So, let's go to, because AMD tested GRE. I know why they compared it to GRE, because GRE was priced similar and they wanted to do like an equal price comparison. But realistically, I think they would have shown better results if they compared it to the 7800 XT. I see the 9070 XT as the successor to the 7800 XT. In terms of die size, in terms of like the overall package, the 16 gigabyte thing, the 256-bit bus. Now, I know the GRE is 256-bit bus, but the GRE is such a heavily cut down Navi 31 die, whereas 7800 XT is the full Navi 32, and as far as we know, the Navi 48 die for the 9070 XT is the full die. Therefore, this is actually the proper comparison. So, and you look at these numbers, and 36% versus like the 21% or whatever for that one, for the GRE to this, to the 9070 XT. So this is actually the true successor to the 7800 XT. Everything is so out of whack that no one's calling that out. So that's just something that I observed. But that's kind of what I consider the generational uplift, is like 36% on average. Well, these are Tech Power-Ups numbers, so depending on like games and things, it could be higher, it could be lower. But in general, we're looking at 35 to 40% uplift from RDNA 3 to RDNA 4 in terms of the equivalent. So that is the overall relative performance uplift. So, yeah, not bad. Let me see. What did they say in the conclusion? So, multi-monitor power consumption is finally fixed. PCI Gen 5. This stuff. The HDMI 2.1B and DisplayPort 2.1A. This is nothing different from the RDNA 3. RDNA 3 was the first GPU generation to introduce this. And AMD didn't change anything. They literally just carried over the same spec from RDNA 3 for the display outs for this generation. So it says here, okay, what I want to know is what their, okay, NVIDIA switched to GDDR7, AMD continue, oh, and also, supply of GDDR7 has not ramped up, which is another reason why the 50 series is in very, very short supply. So they've got yield issues on the big dies, and then they have GDDR7 having to ramp. And that is another reason why it is very hard to get a 50 series card, because NVIDIA decided to go with GDDR7, whereas AMD stuck with the tried and true GDDR6, which is in high supply. So there you go. Because NVIDIA, it's interesting, NVIDIA is on the same node as last time. AMD went to a newer node for RDNA 4, but they stuck with the older memory. NVIDIA went new memory and old node. AMD went newer node and old memory. So it's kind of like they crisscross over each other in that regard. 9070 XT comes with 4096 GPU core. That sounds like a very familiar number. 9070 non-XT has, that's another one. So 13% difference. Both cards feature 16 gigs, 128 ROPS, and the number of RT cores is 64, aka Vega 64. That's a throwback, and Vega 56. Yeah, so they're using the TSMC 4N4P, while Blackwell is on the same 5 nanometer from last time. AMD is not producing any reference design. Okay, see, this is a problem. This is a problem in the same way that it's a problem for the 5070 Ti. These cards not having reference cards means that the market can run out of control at any minute. The prices can hike sky high. No one can do anything about it. There's no anchor. So the thing is, if you don't care about the reference design, you need to care about the reference design. That doesn't mean that you have to buy a reference design if you want an AMD card. All I'm saying is that the purpose of the reference design is to act like an anchor point, a reference point for the price. It's like a baseline expected MSRP. So without one of these, who's going to determine what the MSRP is? It's basically vaporware. It's not real. Someone can claim that the MSRP, once upon a time it was $599, but was it really ever $599? You know what I'm saying? So the AIBs can be like, yeah, we can just charge, whatever. Make up some excuse. Oh, yeah, tariffs. Yeah, tariffs. But that shouldn't affect the EU, right? Well, I don't know, maybe it does. Okay, well, the tariffs. Okay, well, now, supply. There could be all kinds of excuses. They can be like, inflation. Someone could just yell out, inflation. Okay, the price needs to be higher. Oh, supply issues. Okay, supply issues. Raise the price. There's less supply. They can artificially inflate the price automatically overnight because there's literally no anchor. There's literally no ground point. You have a circuit that's floating like an antenna. Amplification of the price. The price is going up. So I would not be surprised if the price on these cards will skyrocket in a couple of weeks because there's literally no anchor point. Just like 5070 Ti. One of the reasons why the 5070 Ti, even though at the end of the day, out of all of the 50 series cards, the 5070 Ti is actually the best value out of all the 50 series cards. But guess what? There's no anchor point because there's no Founders Edition. So there's like nothing holding it. So hence, do you understand why there's like $1,100 5070 Tis? From the retailers? Not from scalpers, from the actual retailers. Yes, Newegg and Micro Center can charge over $1,000 for a 5070 Ti. Why? Because there's no rules. There's no reference. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if someone says, there's an MSRP. I don't remember what it was. Jensen claimed there was one, but was there really ever an MSRP? There's like, no, okay, can you prove it? Can you prove there's an MSRP? No, we can charge $900. We can charge $100. The thing's sold out. Oh, we can charge $1,000. The thing's sold out. So there's really no anchor point. How about the price of the XTX? That's a good question. It doesn't matter. The 700 XTX doesn't matter. You know why? It's end of life. It doesn't exist anymore. You can't buy one brand new. Hence, it's irrelevant. The retailers will ignore its existence and just price the new cards however they feel. Like the market will just do whatever it wants. Okay, this is the reason why there needs to be reference cards, guys. This is the reason why. So the dangerous thing here, there is a high risk right now of these wonderful 9070 series cards suffering the same price hike as the 50 series cards. Now, the only thing that can somewhat control the price from going way out of control is stock, available inventory. If the supply of these cards can be maintained at regular intervals, this shouldn't become a severe problem. But if the supply starts slowing down for whatever reason, tariffs on this country, tariffs on that country. Okay, let's try to move everything to this other country so we can dodge it. Okay, that's gonna delay the shipment by like 3 months. Oh, there goes 1 quarter. Now we missed. Now the supply is gonna go low. Oh, guess what? Raise the price. Raise the price. So, like, this type of stuff can end up happening very, very easily. So one of the things that I was thinking about when I was waiting in line at Micro Center, because I was at Micro Center this morning for like 2 hours, standing up, waiting to check out with the 9070 XT. I was thinking, like, this, in some ways, this GPU launch for RDNA 4 and RTX 50 series feels somewhat eerily similar to the 30 series and the RDNA 2 launch. Yet there's no pandemic, and supposedly there's no supply chain shortages. So it's kind of weird how, like, something happened and all of a sudden somebody sounded the horn of Gondor and all the scalpers and the Urukai just, like, came out of the woodwork. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, oh, line up, boys. Let's scalp this stuff up quick. Scalp all the 5090s, blah, blah, blah. Scalp all the 5080s, blah, 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 blah. So they basically came out of hiding and just gobbled up all the 50 series cards. Oh, like, Thanos snap. 5090s don't exist. 5080s don't exist. 5070 Ti? 5070 Ti? What are you talking about? That thing costs more money than a 4080 Super. So, yeah, man. It's like we're almost back into the dark times. It's almost like it's 2021 again. Except people are going outside of their houses and stuff. And no one's wearing masks. Imagine 2021 where everyone was wearing masks and stuff, and you couldn't buy anything, and scalpers had everything, there was no supply. Only now, it's like that, except there's no masks, and there's no pandemic, there's like nothing, so it's like, why are we in this situation? How did this happen? Like, I don't understand. Like, I was thinking about that while I was standing in line at Micro Center. I was like, this feels eerily like the 30 series and RDNA 2 all over again. Like, the fact that you have to go to a Micro Center and wait in line when the store opens to buy a graphics card is a little concerning. It's a little concerning. You know what I'm saying? There was a huge supply. Huge supply of what? Of which one? 5090 scalping. Nvidia holds stock to drive prices up? I don't think so. I think Nvidia's holding stock. I think Nvidia's having trouble manufacturing the cards. There's probably some problem with, like, there's not enough GDDR7 ramped up yet, or something along those lines. That's like one of the variables, if I had to guess. But yeah, this could get out of control easily, though. If supply slows down, this is going to shoot up in price. But I don't see the supply slowing down for AMD, because AMD, like, they stopped producing RDNA 3 a while ago. So they kind of have, like, this is literally all they've got. They've got this, and then they have, like, lower end RDNA 3. It's basically this and 7600. That's literally all AMD has right now. Okay, Tech Power Up measured a 32% uplift over the GRE. So that doesn't make sense because their numbers on their graph on the GPU database does not match. Because like 32% over GRE, but it's like 36% over the... So 45... See, this is weird because that doesn't actually line up with their website. Like if I go to 7900 GRE... If I go to this and then I go look at the 9070 XT, see, they're saying 24%? Something is wrong with their site. No, that can't be, though. No, that looks like that lines up with these. So, yeah, I don't understand why... Okay, they're saying in their review that it was 35% faster. That's not what the graph shows. Performance roughly similar to 5070 Ti. The 5070 Ti. The RDNA, hold on. Wait, what? RDNA 4? RDNA 4, NVIDIA this. Okay, so what is that? There's 21 million, yeah. Okay, yeah. You're saying they're going to produce that much in Q2. That doesn't mean they're going to sell that much in Q2. Producing is different from selling. So, so that doesn't explain why is the supply on Nvidia so slow in Q1? If you're saying that they're manufacturing, what was the reason for that? What's the reason for the Q1 being so slow for Nvidia? Why are they behind 1 quarter is what I'm asking. So I have 2 questions. One is, why did they miss Q4? Like, why did they not launch in Q4? And the second question I have is, why is Q1 so slow for them? NVIDIA missed, what is GB? NVIDIA missed GB wafer starts by 1 quarter. What is GB wafer? Oh, what? Global wafer? What is GB? Oh, Blackwell. They missed it. Why did they miss it? Anyway. What was the reason? Yeah, no, I know. But what was the reason for missing that quarter? So, okay, so no one really knows. Only NVIDIA knows. Maybe TSMC also knows. They delayed Blackwell production last year as well. No, they didn't. There's a reason for this, though. I don't know what it was. Did they really delay Blackwell? Because I thought Blackwell launched in enterprise market for business customers. Did they delay Blackwell for their entire company? For all sectors? Or did they only delay it for consumer? For discrete GPU for consumer? Because I thought business customers got Blackwell. I thought Blackwell shipped to the OEMs, the ODMs for the AI market. For the server market. Enterprise launch, but they had to delay shipments. So you guys understand where this is going. So NVIDIA's time to market for the AI matters more to them than gaming graphics cards. This is why some people, whether they understand this point or not, they think that NVIDIA doesn't care about gamers anymore, which is partially true because you have to look at it from NVIDIA's point of view. NVIDIA's profit margin for the AI chips is significantly higher. It's orders of magnitude higher than the gaming segment. So it's like, think about it like this. At the end of the day, you have to look at it from NVIDIA's point of view as practical thinking. Like, which one's going to pay the bills? The customer that pays you a much higher profit margin, or these little customers that only buy like one unit at a time and they are very price conscious and they don't always buy the highest end. They typically buy like 70 class, 60 class hardware. Is the public supposed to know about the ROP issue on the laptops? Which laptop? You said HX. You're talking about the Ryzen plus NVIDIA? You're talking about the 9000 series laptops with the RTX 50 series? And Intel's Arrow Lake in laptop with NVIDIA GPUs? Is this what you're talking about? So, okay. Yeah, that's more important, guys. That's the other thing, too. A lot of people don't realize discrete GPU is like NVIDIA's lowest priority right now. Because mobile, they sell more GPUs in mobile globally than they do discrete.
This NVIDIA launch is worse than the crypto bull run.
Is it? It feels eerily familiar, but oh, well, are you talking about the crypto bull run from the pandemic era? That was the one where people were buying NVIDIA cards for crypto, but the previous one, people were buying mostly AMD cards for crypto. The one from like 2017, when everyone was buying up like RX 470s and RX 570s. I mean, they were buying like 1070s also, but, you know, like those were more expensive, so their ROI wasn't as good. NVIDIA issued a statement saying that mobile cards aren't missing wraps, but who knows? Oh, yeah, see, I don't know. Man, 50 series. See, this is the stuff that we talked about not last week, but the week before last week. When 5070 Ti launched, we talked about a lot of these things, about how 50 series has all these... I don't know. Somebody screwed up somewhere, and it's... Yeah, it's just, I don't know, it just doesn't look good. Anyway, let's quickly go over these last couple of cards here. So the Pure from Sapphire, this one apparently boosts to over 3 gigahertz. Out of the white cards, this was the very first one to sell out instantly, both online and at Micro Center. The fact that it is not the flagship, it's not a Nitro, and it still has the triple finger. It has 3 fingers, despite it being more of like the middle segment. That also kind of tells me, man, see, Sapphire has like really good quality. Yeah. Yeah, and NVIDIA cares a lot about the laptop market, so because that's literally the way they stay relevant in the consumer segment. It's through the laptops. Because you guys have to remember, NVIDIA does not, at least not yet, NVIDIA doesn't have a CPU for consumer desktop or consumer laptop. So the only way they're relevant is through their GPU. And laptops, most people buy laptops versus desktops. You know, like, there's a lot of people, the average person is more, the average random person you run into is more likely to have a laptop than have a desktop. So, obviously, they're most likely to have a smartphone But in addition to a smartphone, they're more likely going to have a laptop than an actual desktop. And this is the reason why the laptop market, the mobile market, is way more important to NVIDIA than the discrete desktop market. So desktop market has even lower priority than mobile market for NVIDIA. Now, this is also true for Intel and AMD. Well, like it's funny because AMD doesn't even compete with NVIDIA anymore in laptops for discrete GPUs. Like, I don't even know what was it like? Was the RDNA 3, the 7800M or something was like the last AMD mobile part? So I guess they still compete, but I can't think of any like laptops that have AMD discrete graphics cards in them that are like recent. So NVIDIA stays relevant mostly through laptops, at least for the consumer segment. That doesn't mean that they're not relevant in the desktop market. Obviously they are, but I'm talking about it from NVIDIA's point of view. How they prioritize when they have these fixed finite wafers from TSMC, they have to decide, like what percentage of these wafers are going to go to AI customers? What percentage is going to go to mobile customers like Dell, Lenovo, HP, the guys who make laptops, essentially, Acer, ASUS, etc. And then the remainder, what quantity will go to discrete. And there's also like a semi-custom leg of the company as well, like their SoC for Nintendo. Nintendo's their primary customer on the gaming segment with the upcoming Switch 2, for example. So a portion of those, but those are easier for them to do because they're using an older architecture, in this case using Ampere or some variant of Ampere, and it doesn't need to be on the latest node. So that's how they have to allocate these things. And you got to think about it like, okay, well, if I can make, I don't know, let's just use some arbitrary numbers for argument's sake. If NVIDIA can make let's just say $3 billion selling to like 4 customers versus like trying to make, I don't know, not even close to half of that selling to not retailers, to AIB companies like ASUS and MSI to make GPUs, who do you think they're going to prioritize? Like, is it better for them to sell to 4, like Microsoft, Meta, and then whoever the other cloud companies are that are using like the AI chips, the big AI chips like the Hopper and those things, and the GPUs in the servers? Like, isn't it better for NVIDIA to sell to those companies that have really, really deep pockets and deal with maintaining the customer relationship on a business-to-business relationship level versus selling to like ASUS, Zotac, like all these other guys that are going to build GPUs, and then they're going to try to sell these GPUs at lower margins to the mass market. And they're going to probably pull in, I don't know, like $500 million in like a quarter or whatever. I don't know, like whatever. Like, it's not going to be as much as the AI market, I can tell you that. And that's the reason why you have a finite number of wafers. What are you going to do? How are you going to divide the resources to make the most money? That's how it works at the end of the day. And that's the reason why the gamers feel like they're being abandoned. Okay, so the Pure is good. The Pulse is basically reference. You can see it's reference. And then finally, XFX. The Mercury. This one is the leader of the pack. This is the one that does 3.1 gigahertz out of the box. They have 2 other variants of this. They have the white version of this. They also have one that doesn't have RGB, but it has a white LED. And I would actually be okay with that because I don't really care too much about RGB, but I do like the light bar on there. And then Quicksilver, this is the one that I ended up getting. We already have an unboxing video on the channel. We're going to be live streaming with various games tomorrow with this card. So stay tuned for that. It has customizable shroud. It has the magnetic air fans. It does not run at the same clock speed as the Mercury. It has a lower power limit, but you can always overclock it. It only has the dual 8-pin, whereas the Mercury had triple 8-pin. And then finally, the Swift. This is the reference card. This one sells at MSRP. It also comes in white. There's no RGB. The XFX logo does light up, though, so it does have that. And all the XFX cards, all three of these different product tiers feature the triple DisplayPort 2.1 and the single HDMI 2.1B. And that's pretty much all of the 9070 XT and I guess 9070s that are available at launch. And that pretty much covers it. So overall, I don't know the results. The reviews are very positive. The card is mostly easy to get. I don't know how that will play out in the next couple of weeks. But I don't think there'll be a super huge problem with supply. I think if you really want one of these cards and you're going to upgrade this year, it will be relatively easy to get these cards throughout the year. So now we did not talk about the... Okay, well this is the latest driver. If you're planning to get a 9070 or a 9070 XT, you do need to be on the 21.3.1 driver minimum. That is the latest driver. This is the first one to introduce support for these graphics cards. If you're on an older driver and you install one of these cards, it will not run the driver. It'll literally boot up and it'll run Microsoft Basic Display Adapter. So you'll have to install the latest driver. What's this? Update, recall claim, retracted. NVIDIA's GeForce 5090s are now being recalled in Europe over a quote-unquote fire hazard warning issue likely related to the 12-volt 2x6 connector. Oh, there's a recall? They're being 5090s are being recalled in Europe. For real? In an update, this was today. Well, tomorrow, depending on where you are in the world. Where I am, it's still the 6th of March, but this is as of the 7th of March. Kit Guru has confirmed that the retailer has now retracted... Who's the retailer? Oh, a major European retailer issues a recall. Has now retracted the claim. So it's not happening? Okay. This is weird. This looks to me like the plastic melted. This looks like the actual metal is okay. It almost makes me wonder. So obviously the way this happens is too much current flows across one pin or maybe more than one pin. Well, what ends up happening is the temperature on that metal rises. And it has to get so hot that the surrounding plastic breaks down. It exceeds the temperature for the plastic, the melting point of the plastic, and the plastic starts melting. And that's what this looks like to me. Because if you look at this metal still looks like it's mostly intact. Like, obviously there are carbon deposits, and there's other, like the non-organic, the plastic material deposited on the metal here. But this looks like the plastic melted. And you can see there's foreign debris. You can see, like, this looks like a piece of, like, dog fur or something right here. That looks like some kind of hair. That looks like a cat or a dog's fur that's stuck there or whatever. That could be a human hair. It looks more like it's like pet fur or something. Like, this is what I mean by foreign debris getting in the connector, like dust specks and stuff, increasing the resistance and building up heat over time. So yeah, I don't know, man. I just don't like the connector. I just don't like this connector. This is the main reason why I didn't get the Nitro. I literally talked so positively about the Sapphire Nitro earlier, and it shouldn't be a problem with that card because that card doesn't pull this much power, but still, this is so... yeah, I'd rather just not deal with this connector. Yeah, I don't know. In other news, the 5070 came out. We need to talk about 5070. RTX 5070 launched yesterday. And we're just going to skip to the numbers. Let's just skip straight to the numbers. Average FPS. At 1080p, 154.6. That's pretty good. That's on par with 3090 Ti. Let's go up to 1440. Okay. It falls back a little bit. 114. 114. That seems pretty good for 1440. So it's a little bit faster than 4070 Super. It's a little bit slower than 4070 Ti. You go to 4K, 65.8 FPS. So this is definitely not a 4K graphics card. It's too close to 60. And it only has 12 gigs of VRAM. That right there means it doesn't hit the minimum requirements for 4K gaming, as far as I'm concerned. If it doesn't have 16 gigabytes, it's not a good choice for 4K. So let's go to relative. Okay, so at 1080p, according to Tech Power Up, the 5070 is faster than a 4070 Super by a few percentage points at 1080p. At 1440p, wait, what? Did it? Oh no, it didn't. Okay, what happened here? Oh, at 1440, the 3090 Ti moved up in front of the 4070 Ti. That's what happened. Okay, so at 1440p, it's still, according to Tech Power Up, it's still a few percentage points faster than the 4070 Super. $4K. Well, okay, it's not a 4K card, but this is the percentage, how it actually stacks up. So what do they say about this? Because those numbers actually, I didn't look too much into the 5070, but those numbers for the 1080p and the 1440 look decent. Temperatures and fan noise. Whoa, hold on a second. Wait a minute. Whoa, hold on. Wait. What is this? What is this? Do I see? Am I reading that correctly? Is that true? Hold on a second. Is that true? Is that really 2,578 RPM? That's a jet engine. Hold on. That's loud. That is loud. That's very loud. Whoa, that's loud. This is blower style. This is like on the same level of a blower style. What is going on here? 2,600 RPM? For real? On the Founders Edition? 229 watts? 37, that's about 38 dB. 38 dB. With 2,600 RPM. This is so bad. This is like awful. This is awful. This thing literally fails because it's so noisy. Like, I just straight up don't even consider it. And I'm someone who always only says I will only buy Founders Edition. This Founders Edition is so bad. It is like the garbage tier, bottom of the barrel 5070. That is awful. Awful, awful, awful. 2600 RPM. And the memory is still almost 80 degrees Celsius. How do you do that? How do you run at like lawnmower noise levels and your memory is still almost 80 degrees? Like, what? What? That's so bad. Okay, now I'm exaggerating. 37.7 is not as loud as a lawnmower. This is still, this is very audible. Let's put it this way. This is audible. You will hear this. 2500 RPM is all you need to know that you're going to hear this card. That it's going to be noisy. It's going to be annoying. It's going to be annoying. On the 5070 Founders Edition. This is so bad. But, okay, let's look at the others. So, the Tough. Okay, that's quiet. That's good. The Tough Quiet is so quiet, you won't even hear it over the case fans. The Gaming Trio. Okay, well, okay. Basically, what this is telling me is like, hey, AIBs exist for a reason. And don't buy this piece of garbage from NVIDIA. If you really want a 5070, the AIBs are like way better. Literally all of them are significantly better. The worst in terms of RPM AIB is this Zotac Solid at 1600 RPM. That's still almost 1000 RPMs quieter than the Founders Edition. 29 dBA versus 38 dBA. Every 3 dB, you double or cut in half your noise. Let that sink in. Very, very bad. Very, very bad. Okay, temperatures. Oh no, did we look at that? Yeah. Cooler performance. Okay, noise normalized. Noise normalized. 76.7, and then all these guys are way better. Memory, all these guys are way better. Power consumption. It pulls on average 250 watts. What is the idle? Okay. Multi-monitor, whatever. That was never really a problem. Okay, video playback. Gaming. They're saying 230 watts. Oh, yeah, that's because that one Spider-Man 2 one runs really low. So, okay. I mean, it doesn't use that much power, but the mid-range NVIDIA cards have been relatively efficient for many years now. Ray tracing. It uses 250 something. Maximum, the spikes. Okay, no, this is not the spikes. This is Firmark 257. And then VSync 108. Interesting. So the VSync is worse than last gen. That means 50 series Blackwell uses more electricity when capping the FPS to 60 FPS than 40 series. Which also means that it's less efficient than the AMD card, because the AMD card is basically 40 series power consumption when V-synced. So NVIDIA regressed. Power spikes, 20 millisecond. That's fine. This is not going to trip OCP. And, alright, value. Wait, let's see overclocking potential. How well does this thing overclock? So there's no hotspot sensor. You have no idea, like, how hot, if you're cooking your core or whatever. That's nice. So, very good NVIDIA. There's no visibility into whether or not the card is overheating on the hotspot. Good choice there. Okay. Okay, it did. That's pretty good. At least synthetic. That doesn't really represent real world, but that's 12% overclock. Okay. MSRP 550. Okay, I guess this thing, it's, to me, in a vacuum, just looking at it without even knowing what the other cards are capable of, this doesn't look terrible to me. So I'm trying to understand why everybody said this was so bad without thinking about AMD's cards or like the older cards. Just looking at it in a vacuum. The FE is terrible. It's loud. Fans can be quieter. Yeah. Limited supply for now. Memory overclocking is limited by driver. That's weird. Oh, because it's GDDR7. Okay. Okay, so it doesn't really do anything in terms of moving the needle. In terms of the performance. So, how much faster is this than 4070? Okay. So they're saying 22% over 4070. 22% over 4070. Which is a bit lower than expected, but it's alright. At 4K, the increase is 25. But literally, who's going to be using this at 4K? Which is certainly better than a meager 15. Oh, yeah, well, 5080, you know, whatever. 5090, okay, that's cool. This one, yeah. That's kind of why this is the value. This is like the best one overall. But there's no anchor, so it's like, okay, whatever. NVIDIA is unable to achieve their twice the performance. Da, 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 da. So basically, it's because... Are people criticizing this thing because NVIDIA is not delivering the expected uplift? Is that the reason? Overall performance is roughly similar to 4070 Ti. Compared to 4070 Super, the performance uplift is 5%. When compared against AMD, 5070 sits in the middle between 7900 XT and GRE. So 5070 is faster than GRE. AMD's own performance projections see the 9070 XT a bit slower than 5070 Ti. That has nothing to do with this review. Okay. The 9070 should end up roughly similar to 5070. While 5070 is definitely great for 1440, it is weak for 4K. Yeah, I definitely agree. I wouldn't even recommend it for 4K. It doesn't have enough VRAM for the long term. Okay, so it's underwhelming. I don't really know if it's that terrible, though, just looking at those numbers. So, I don't know. Maybe there's something about it that I wasn't aware of. Everybody's hating on this card, though. Like, it's so awful. It's not faster than GRE at 1440. What CPU do you use in your PC to match those GPUs? Oh, you're talking about what? The 9070 XT or something like this one? Probably the 9800 X3D would be a really good choice for that GPU. You could also do, like if you live near Micro Center, you could just buy a Micro Center bundle. You know what? There were a couple of people at Micro Center this morning that came into the store and did a full build. And I'm like, how are you going to show up to a store when you know there's like 500 people outside in line to buy this GPU? And you're going to like try to go through the store and build a whole computer? Like while there's all these people just stuck in the aisles trying to check out? Like, I don't know. There were people who were like pushing cars trying to like choose computer parts, like keyboards and stuff. I'm like, man, these people need to like come back tomorrow, man. Like, don't come in here trying to build a whole computer when there's like 500 people outside and there's like 200 people in the store trying to check out with GPUs and stuff. And it's like, really? You're going to come up here in the morning of all things? Why not come back in like the evening after like everyone has cleared out and there's no more? I don't know, man. It was weird. There was not that many people doing that. But the fact that there was people that showed up and were trying to like build a full PC when there's like all these other people around in the store, just I would never do that. That was weird. Oh, 9070, 5070, those ones. Typically it would be like a 9800 X3D for those. Now you could go higher end, you could go 9900 9900X, 9950X, the upcoming 9950X 3D, etc. You could do that, but in general, yeah, I would say a 16 core is good. 16 core, up to 16 core is fine, because 16 core you want minimum VRAM, 1 gig of VRAM per physical core. So if I have, for example, a 9800X 3D, this is an 8-core CPU, so I need a minimum of 8 gigabytes of VRAM, and the 9070 XT has double that. So that's more than enough for a 9800X 3D. Now, alternatively, if I was going with a higher end CPU, like the 9950X, for example, or the 9950X 3D, this is a 16-core CPU. So again, 16 gigabytes of VRAM would be like the minimum spec for a 16-core CPU. So yeah, it can scale up to a 16-core processor, no problem. And people are probably wondering, like, where am I getting these numbers? Like, this is from Adobe's Creative Suite. This is more for productivity. So when you ask me that question, that question has a, like, I'm sensing that it's more for like a productivity or like an overall PC, not just for gaming. So that's why I'm giving you the background on why those numbers are the way they are. It's more for productivity. This doesn't really apply to gaming. Now, that doesn't mean you can't apply this logic to a gaming PC. I personally always apply this logic to every PC that I build. And that's why I never have any issues with frame stuttering and resource problems, like not enough VRAM, not enough system RAM. That's never been a problem for me because I build the computer appropriately sized based off of what's actually being used. Where do you get the 9070 XT FE? There is no 9070 XT. There isn't one. You have to choose an AIB. Literally, the purpose of this entire live stream was to go over every single AIB option. We already covered all of them. So I'll put timestamps after the stream for all the different GPUs. We literally went over every single 9070 XT and 9070 on stream. We've covered all of them, so they're all in there. Even the ones that you can't buy, like the Acer. So, I don't know. It seems like a lot of people managed to get cards, though. I think it was a pretty positive experience for those that lived near a micro center and were able to go there in the morning. It wasn't that hard to get one. If you wanted MSRP, you could get one easily at MSRP. You forgot the Vast Armor? Oh, yeah, those other ones. Those are never going to get... Some of those are never going to get listed on Newegg. In fact, actually, check this out. Look at this. Lisa Su was signing, like, autographs on the boxes for the Radeon cards. I don't know where she got the Sakura one, because Micro Center didn't have that one, and I don't think you could order that off of Newegg. So I don't know how she managed to get the Sakura one. She basically has the anime card. The one with the waifu on it. Why Lisa Su has the waifu card? I'm like, where did she get the Yestin, man? Like, where did you get that? Like, that isn't even sold in America. It's like, what? It's like, where's the box? Where's the box? Like, she doesn't even have the box. It's like, oh yes, you have Acer. Acer's over here. You can't buy the Acer card in America either, at least not yet. So, the Tai Chi, the ASUS Tough. I like how the Hellhound from PowerColor is photobombing in front of the ASUS box. This card down here is a PowerColor Hellhound, not an ASUS card. So it's blocking the ASUS box. That's hilarious. Then you have the Yestin in here. And then you have the PowerColor Red Devil, the Sapphire Pure, the Gigabyte Aorus Elite, and the card that I ended up getting, the XFX Quicksilver over here. Yeah, the one on the far right, the vertical box. For those that don't know, XFX, does the vertical box design. So unboxing channel, or the unboxing video is on the channel. If you guys want to see what is actually in this box, there's more than just the graphics card in here. And it's actually pretty interesting. You have to assemble the graphics card yourself. It requires the user to do that, which is definitely different from all the other cards. Very, very interesting. But yeah, this was probably AMD's most successful graphics card launch since the launch of the 6800 XT was successful, but it was like gobbled up by scalpers in an instant. So I don't even know if you could say that was a successful launch. I don't know. The last really good AMD launch was probably the 5700 XT in terms of like how easy it was to get one at launch. I'm pretty sure it was 5700 XT and 5700. Yeah, those cards. RDNA 1. RDNA 1. The 5-year GPU. So this is what we're going to do for the review. I don't like charts that have like a whole bunch of graphics cards, especially graphics cards that are in price points that don't even match this card. So we're going to compare the 9070 XT to the 5700 XT because that is RDNA 1. That is the OG, the GPU generation that reset AMD back to baseline and started them off on the RDNA path. So we're going to be looking at 5700 XT versus 9070 XT, and we're also going to look at RDNA 2. We're going to look at the 6800 XT because that one is of a similar price point to the average selling price for the 9070 XT when that card was ever sold around MSRP back in the day. So yeah, we're going to be looking at 5700 XT, 6800 XT, and 9070 XT. Those three. I don't know if I need to compare any others. I could probably throw a really, really old card in, like the GTX 1080. I could even throw in a Vega 64 if I wanted, and I've been thinking about including Vega 64, but I don't think anyone's still using a Vega 64. So I feel like that's a waste of time. It's more of like oh, this is interesting. I had no idea the Vega 64 was performed like this. So yeah, I think we're going to do RDNA 1 versus RDNA 2 versus RDNA 4. RDNA 3 we don't really need to compare because I think a lot of other reviewers already looked at RDNA 3, like a GRE and a 7800 XT, and how those compare to this. And I'm the type of person who I feel like most people that are on the last generation, like for example, if you're on RDNA 3, you're on a Radeon 7000 series GPU, you probably don't need to upgrade to this. Unless you're on like an entry level, like a 7600, then this would be a massive upgrade for you. But I don't think anyone on RDNA 3 really is missing out too much by skipping this generation. Especially if you're on a GRE or better. Like if you're on Big Navi 31, GRE or XC or XTX, you probably completely skip the 9070 XT. You're not missing out too much. You're just missing out on like FSR 4 at this point. You know, like that's and the better encoder. That's basically it. Like those two things. So it's not a big deal. Everybody else though, people who are on RDNA 2, people who are on 6800, 6700 XT, and then anything older, RDNA 1, Radeon 7, Vega 64, Vega 56, anyone who's still on RX 580, RX 570, RX 480, RX 470, all those old Polaris GPUs that are still showing up on Steam hardware surveys. I don't understand why, but they still are there. Apparently people are still on those cards. Like those cards going to a 480 to this is like night and day. It's like you are on another planet. So you've gone so far into the future that it's like it's incomprehensible almost. So it's like time travel, literally. So yeah, this was probably AMD's most successful launch in 5 years. In like 5 years. 5.5 years almost. So really, really good stuff. The card is great. What I can tell you after testing briefly with Monster Hunter, playing it at 4K, basically 1440p upscaled to 4K, in Monster Hunter Wilds, the card is dead silent and it performs very well. But we will be taking a look at this live tomorrow. Same time tomorrow. So if you're curious to see how the 9070 XT performs in games like Monster Hunter Wilds, tune in tomorrow evening because we'll be taking a look at that on stream. We'll probably look at some other games as well, but I do plan on devoting most of that live stream to Monster Hunter Wilds. So we will look at that. So you guys will see tomorrow. So if you're interested in one of these cards and you play Monster Hunter Wilds, the last thing I will say is if you are upgrading your computer, not just the GPU, but if you're actually planning to do a full system upgrade, like if you're upgrading the CPU, you can actually get Monster Hunter Wilds for free if you purchase like a Ryzen CPU. Technically, you can also get it from buying a GPU, but it's the 9070 and 9070 XT are not included in the bundle. So, which is unfortunate because, I don't know, that would have been a really good deal. Like, if you buy a 9070 or 9070 XT and you straight up get Monster Hunter Wilds, this is currently the front runner for Game of the Year 2025, for those that don't know. So, I'm sure there'll be more games that come out that will contest for that position, but right now, this is the front runner that all reviewers pretty much agree. So, and I agree with them. But I'm kind of biased, so whatever. Like, Monster Hunter is one of my main franchises. So, anyway. Unfortunately, 9070, 9070 XT are not included. But if you are doing a full system upgrade, especially if you live near a Micro Center, Micro Center has some insanely good bundles on Zen 4 and Zen 5. You combine that, you basically get the free 32 gigabytes of DDR5-8000. You can choose the motherboard. There's like different options now. It used to be like fixed motherboards, but now you can actually change. I think you have to pay like anywhere from $20 to $50 more, depending on the motherboard that you want to bundle with it, with the CPU. And then you also get Monster Hunter on top of that. So it's like, wow, you actually can get the motherboard, the CPU, and the RAM as a bundle, and then Monster Hunter is free on top of that. So that's like 4 things. Then you just get the 9070 or 9070 XT, and it's a done deal. Like, that's literally a full upgrade. You can use the exact same old power supply that you already have, because the GPU uses the standard 8-pin. It doesn't need to be an ATX 3.0. The power spikes are not that bad. Really, really good system. Very easy to upgrade to. So, yeah, that's just the last thing I'll mention for those that are curious about Monster Hunter and you, like, I don't know, you're on the fence about wanting to get it. And this is one way to avoid having to buy the game, and it's like a really good game. So, it's a multiplayer game too, with co-op. So, we will be hosting multiplayer sessions on stream in the future, once we get past all this review content for the 9070 XT. So, stay tuned for that. Yeah, I said it earlier. We'll be live streaming 9070 XT in games tomorrow on the gaming PC. The one that was shown off earlier at the start of the stream. No, it's unfortunately it doesn't include RDNA 4. Now AMD might add RDNA 4 to this bundle at some point. They might do it because they did this with Starfield. I remember they went back and they retroactively added the 7800 XT? 7800 XT when it launched. That was when Starfield was brand new. They retroactively added the 7800 XT and the 7700 XT to the Starfield bundle back in 2023. So they could totally end up doing that, but I don't know. Like, I'm just saying, like, if you need a full system upgrade, because Monster Hunter Wilds is incredibly CPU bound. Like anyone who's on DDR4 is constantly CPU bound. Even if you're on a 5800X 3D, you're still CPU bound because of the DDR4 memory bandwidth limitation. So these are all DDR5 based systems or CPUs. So this is like a huge upgrade from a DDR4 platform for this particular game, because this game is very CPU bound, incredibly CPU bound. We did a whole video last week showcasing CPU benchmark scaling for Monster Hunter Wilds. So I definitely check that video out, because a lot of reviewers of Monster Hunter and a lot of people playing the game and giving it negative reviews on Steam are complaining like, hey, I have a 5080 and I'm only getting like 40 FPS. Well, what they don't tell you is that they're still rocking an ancient i9 9900K, and that's the reason why their game performs like garbage, despite having a super high-end graphics card. So the CPU really, really matters in this game. It really matters. So DDR5 is what is needed for this game, minimum. So, well, I don't know about minimum. You can get by with older CPUs, but you're gonna have a lot of stutters, a lot of hitching, and a lot of like bad 1% lows if you're on DDR4 playing Monster Hunter. Okay, so that's gonna be it for this stream. Oh, there's also, like, if you're buying a laptop, I guess there's also laptops that are eligible, as long as they have, I don't know, Strix Point in them, or Strix Halo. Yeah, Strix Halo. This is Hawk Point. This is Phoenix Point. And this is Strix Point. So all of those mobile platforms. Yeah, it's funny. It's funny because the 7600 is very easy to get, and it's not on the list. So anyway, guys, that's going to be it for this stream. Thanks for tuning in. For those of you that are new, do get subscribed if you are curious in when I go live, showcasing things like the 9070 XT. And then next week, we will be looking at the upcoming 9950 X3D. So stay tuned for that. We are going to be looking at that CPU and looking at how that performs in gaming and productivity. So stay tuned for that, because I think that's going to be the best CPU of the year. But it's going to be expensive, but it's going to be the best CPU. So we'll see you guys back next week on Tech Thursdays. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you guys next time. Until then, take care, and I'll see you then. Thanks.